So I'd like to get started here and welcome you all to our first GPUG meeting for 2021. We have an epic meeting today, and I will introduce our fearless leader, Steve Erbach. And as for Steve, if you don't know him, which I think pretty much everybody does, Steve is a all-star, GPUG all-star, and I had his list of accomplishments here and it just went away. He's an all-star. He is a contributor. He has been to summits live and in person since 2014 to 2019. An Emerald winner 2016, 17, 18, and 19. A SIG leader, chapter leader, and an all-around great guy. So I am now going to turn it over to Steve, who got the ball rolling on this, and it's snowballed, and here we are. So welcome, everybody.
Thank you very much, Pam. And I will ask that pretty much everybody mute their mics while we're going on here, because this will be, like I've said several times, this is going to be like herding cats. And we have 11 or so presenters, and the order has been dictated a bit by the ability of our people to actually be here at this time. So we'll get to that in just a bit, but I am going to put up the little bit of a PowerPoint deck that that I put together for this meeting. And let's see, let's share.
While he's doing that, I totally forgot all my things I was supposed to mention. My only job is to mention a few things at the beginning of this is if you can turn your video off during the meeting, just to save bandwidth. If you're speaking, obviously we want to see you. When we go to question and answer, we'll ask you to put on your video so we can see you during that time. In the meantime, if you have questions, put them in chat, and I will try to get the notification out for people to answer those questions. And if there's to a specific person, please put that in there as well. Like Steve said, he's recording the call. It'll be on gpug.com and LinkedIn as well. And now I see, Steve, I can see your slideshow. And
good deal.
Did I get everything? Did I touch on everything that I was supposed to? Mute,
yes.
Mute, unmute as needed.
Right. And if we get to the point where, well, we will get to the point where if you want to ask a question on mic, it would be nice if you turned on your video too. We'd like to see you. This slide deck is very short. I don't have the news or announcements. I'm not going to get into what's been happening with GPUG and DAC. That's separate. We may have a visit today from Aaron Back, who is the director of the DAC site, and he may be able to field questions that you might have about it and its association with GPUG and so forth. Green Bay, Titletown, USA GPUG group. If you're wondering about that picture at the bottom there, that's a photo retouched about a tall ship coming into the Fox River off of Green Bay. That bridge is tall enough to take ships with masts, although sometimes the ships have to add a little extra ballast to squeak in under the bridge. But we don't have the big landmarks except for Lambeau Field, which is, they're a little touchy about having those images presented in an environment like this. But this is the home of the Green Bay Packers, and we're not Titletown, USA for nothing, okay? Let's see. Our agenda is real simple. We're going to break up the speaker groups into two and put a little break in between, and we'll have a question session at the end. But because this is an interactive meeting, we want to have your participation. That's what makes the user group the user group. all the speakers today will have in the neighborhood of 7 minutes or so to touch on a topic or two related to making a decision about either staying with GP or moving to BC, Business Central. And you're here today because it's a chance for you to find out something you may not be able to get otherwise, and that's interaction and viewpoints from people who know what they're talking about. We've got a lot here today. We have 63 registrations from across the fruited plain, as well as from Canada, and one from Ireland even. You can see it up there in the corner, and from Auckland, New Zealand, and Perth, Western Australia. We have participants from 7 different time zones, going from Australian Western, New Zealand Daylight Time, and that's because it's the height of summer in the Southern Hemisphere, Pacific Standard, Mountain, Central, Eastern, and Greenwich Mean Time. So members and presenters are logging in from midnight in Perth, Australia. That's when we might get a visit from David Musgrave, to 3 p.m. in Ireland. The sun never sets on GPUG Green Bay. Now your host today, Pam Hall, and I, Steve Urbach, we're the co-chairs of the GPUG Green Bay, and Pam will keep an eye on the attendance and watch the Teams chat. So if you've got questions while we've got some speakers going, just type a question in the chat, and Pam will keep an eye on that. You can also raise your hand if you'd like to actually say something on mic. But again, if you do that, Pam will spot that, and then we ask you to also turn on your video camera too, so we can see you when you ask a question. This is an interactive session. We hope to help you make the case for either staying with GP or making the switch to BC. This is your user group, and questions answered today by some of the top GP and BC people from around the world. Now here is going to show you the people that are speaking today. I'm not going to read all the stuff, but our first couple are Joe DeRuyter and Zubin Gidwani, having them go first mainly because they've got some things to attend to a little bit later, and they can't stick around for the whole meeting. Belinda and Sean, they both live on the East Coast, and they're like brother and sister, from what I understand. John Kirsch, who's been one of the most generous to the Green Bay GPUG group with presentations and offering sites to have our meetings when we were actually able to have meetings. And David Laster is joining us from the East Coast, also author of one of the first management reporter books that I ever bought when I started with GP. And he's a big Power BI developer at Greyvant. The amazing Amber Bell and Bea Boucher are joining us. Amber from the East Coast, Bea from Canada. Pritin Patel and Barbara Bell, both from Whipley. And last, because he's joining us a little bit later, he said he's got some things to take care of first. That is David Musgrave. So I'm going to stop the presentation here, and I'd like to turn things over first to Joe DeRuyter. So Joe, if you want to share your screen, please do.
Yeah, hey, can you guys see the screen good? Well.
Yes, we can see it. We can see it fine.
Great. All right, so today it's my understanding we're here to talk about the differences between GP and BC. And as most of you know, I'm a diehard GP fan. I've been using GP since '98. I'm one of its biggest fans, but I am now becoming a Business Central geek. It turns out there's so many bells and whistles and so many cool things to do, but today I'm going to speak to you guys about the user experience in Dynamics GP. So again, I am Joe DeRuyter. I'm the practice manager here at Aisling Dynamics Business Solutions. So for today's purposes, there's a lot of different types of users of any kind of ERP system. So I want to be very clear about who I'm directing this to. So there's always the person entering data and transacting. There's a person who's reviewing data. There's an applications manager who keeps everything running. And there's a partner type user who helps you set things up and decide how things go. For today, I want to be focusing on the people who are actually in the system and will be doing data entry and things like that. And I want to show you the differences between BC and GP. And even though you all know I love GP, I have noticed in my own presentation that I am skewing towards loving BC. But the purpose of this is to show you guys from an end user, someone who actually uses it, because at my company, Aisling Dynamics Business Solutions, we're using BC as our back office solution. And again, like to me, I need to use the software ongoing in order to really know it deep down. So the first thing that you're going to notice as an end user is the difference in logging in. So in BC, it's literally a web page, and I just click the Business Central logo. I saved it as a shortcut. I just click it and I'm on. The other thing about that is I can open multiple windows in different tabs and on different windows and different monitors, and it all works just as well. It's really cool. It opens in the cloud. GP, you're used to being on your desktop. So you're usually opening it on your desktop or some kind of deployed web app, but it's always going to look like it's on your desktop. The good and the bad about logging in. So one thing that's great about BC is you can log in from home, from the airport. You can pull over in your car and use your Wi-Fi hotspot and do your stuff. Since it's not on premise, in other words, you're having to host it on a server or on your machine. It's not on premise. You won't have any of the issues of someone needing to maintain an installation on your computer or maintain an installation on a terminal server and that sort of thing. So it's really not necessarily tied into your internal networks or infrastructure. It's an easier login experience overall. So as I pull up GP, I usually have to wait for it to fully load, and then I can put in my login ID and password. With Business Central, it's like that. It's super quick. The bad about BC is that you can log in from anywhere. So it's you're never going to get away from work unless you just have no internet. However, I do see that within companies, I would suggest you pay attention to security and train users not to save passwords, because again, if you are one of those that use Google passwords and you save your password and your company allows that and you forget to log out, anybody can come along and jump into your Business Central. So security should be an issue in a discussion with Business Central. The good about GP, to me, it feels more secure than BC because it is on my local machine or my local infrastructure. And somebody has to get into that infrastructure before they can get to GP. Bad about, again, if IT doesn't do an install correctly or waiting for it to load is always kind of a big pain in my butt. So let's move on to how the home screen looks different. Again, in GP, you've got navigation within modules. You can kind of get to where you need to go and set up shortcuts for yourself. There's always clicking on area pages and drop downs and things like that. And sometimes it goes faster than other times, depending on your speed of your infrastructure. In BC, it's literally super quick, and you're going to see this in action in just a second, but there's still drop downs and shortcuts, but it's a whole different animal in BC. So I recorded videos so I could keep to a time limit today. So if I'm looking for a purchase invoice, I simply click on that lookup button and plug in where I want to go. And then if I want to do a new purchase invoice, it's just that quick. If I want to get to something else, like a sales order or a sales invoice, it's again, I can click that little lookup button and pretty much get to wherever I need to get to in the system. And it's very, very quick. I love the lookup functionality in BC. It's very, very fast to get wherever you're going, see whatever you need. And I want you to notice over in the side over there, you're always going to see those statistics about something that you've clicked on, like no more going and looking for that. It's just kind of right there. I really, really do adore that. Changing companies is also a bit of a different animal in BC. So I'm going to show you guys how fast it is to change companies. I'm not going to stay on the changed company, but all you have to do is go to this area called My Settings and literally click on the other company and open it up. And this is cutting before it actually gets to my actual live company here. But that's how quick it is to change companies in Business Central. This is entering the payables transaction. So I'm going to pause this for a second and give you some background. So I didn't do a video of entering a payables transaction in GP to compare it to BC because most of you kind of know how that goes. But I do want to explain kind of what it looks like in BC and how it's different as we go. So you'll notice here in the vendor name, I'm not necessarily looking up a vendor ID in Business Central, and I can literally just type that name in there and it appears and I can select it. I can choose a different contact. You'll note a lot of the stuff up in the header area doesn't display as required, but a lot of it is. So we'll go on here. The other thing I want to show you is this. What is a DIOT type of operation? We wouldn't know much about that. Most companies in the US wouldn't know much about that here, but this is a great example of how you can get help on what a particular field is in Business Central. So if you'll notice here, I just kind of click on it and it tells me, and then it kind of gives me a link to learn more. And I can quickly just click that link to get more information about what that is. Now, the next piece is the fact that there's going to be a lot on these screens in Business Central. The other thing I love about it that's different than GP is I can customize what I'm looking at. You'll note here that I went up here and I clicked personalize. And I want to remove that DIOT field because I don't need it. As soon as I do that, I can hide it. Now, it doesn't mean it's gone. I didn't remove it. I just hid it because I don't need to see it. And I can kind of get on with my life then with entering. There are no payables transactions, but we're in a purchase invoice and I can do an item, I can do a GL account, I can do a resource entry like an employee time type thing, fixed assets. And then you're not seeing this, but there's a search from a full list here in case it's not there. Now, what does making an error look like in BC? I made an error, just like GP, it's going to validate everything, okay? But it's going to give me more information on what the problem is. Like immediately, the item doesn't exist. So I could go enter an item, or I made a boo-boo, and look how easy it is to fix my boo-boo in Business Central. Like it's super quick, boom, revert this change. And that happens on every window you make a boo-boo on. And trust me, when I first started working in it, I made a lot of boo-boos. So again, like I can enter comments, but the comment type doesn't really get you much. You can enter the comment, but it's not a transaction line necessarily. What I want to show you here is that if I'm doing a regular payables entry, like a rent, look how easy it is to find the GL account. But all I'm doing is entering a GL account line item. I want to order one. Unit of measure is not required, so I'm going to skip right over to the amount, plug it in. And then, of course, I'm pretty much good to go, but there's taxable items here. I can make it taxable or non-taxable. I can use a dimension code. So most of us in GP are used to tons of different segments. In BC, you're looking at something called dimensions. And you can see here I entered the department code sales as my dimension for reporting purposes, but it's possible that I could enter that in a different place, and you'll see that in just a second. So again, I could enter more GL lines, etc. It's always in a payables transaction going to necessarily go against the payables GL account, but there's some other ways to do that. I don't have time today to demo everything in full, but there's that department code again. And I also want to remove the currency code because I don't need currency codes on my windows because I don't transact in different currencies. And I just hide it and get on with, kind of my day here. Again, I could remove any of these and put them back up here. I can go to add a field. As a matter of fact, there's more fields that I could add to this screen if my company uses that. And of course, the KPIs over here or more information about this vendor that I'm working in with quick links to get to information about what I just entered. Okay. So now we want to be able to post to this. Of course, I want to point out that I can use Flow. Well, it used to be called Flow, Power Automate, any of the Power apps, that sort of thing. But everything I want to do is kind of at this top of this window here. And there's a ton more I could do basically, but the posting's right under action. And of course I can just quickly post it and say yes. And you can see the process of posting it. And then you can open the invoice you just posted or not. There's a lot of options that come up right when you post something. So we'll get on. And again, it's really very easy. I should have cut all that out. But here's my listing of all my open invoices. And if I want to enter a new vendor, it's just this quick. I went to enter a new vendor. I'm not going to go that full vendor entry thingy necessarily. But you type in a vendor name, and it's going to get kind of assigned out a vendor number in the background. See that vendor number over there? I'm not making that decision. The way I set it up is making the decision, or it's just making the decision in the background.
Hey, Joe.
Joe?
Yeah.
We have a question.
Oh, pardon? All right, go ahead.
Amber was wondering, is that personalization controlled by security? Does it affect other users? And can you make fields required that are not normally required?
That is an unknown to me. I can find that out. Again, I'm fairly new to Business Central myself. And perhaps one of the other speakers has more info on the security in the background. I have a smaller company, and I've not yet implemented this for a large company. Every company I'm implementing this for has been on the smaller side, and they weren't concerned about that kind of security. I do know that when I change fields I'm looking at, other users in my own company don't see those changes. But I don't know if that's a setting that I did or not, or that we all kind of have different securities.
Okay, Joe.
Yes.
Zubin has to duck out around 9:30. Would you mind putting your presentation on hold for a few minutes? Let him jump in, and then we can resume.
Oh, sure.
All right. Zubin, if you would, and thank you, Joe. I appreciate the flexibility. I know you've got things to do too, but I know Zubin needed to leave. Could you share your screen, Zubin?
Sure. Actually, I don't have anything prepared, but I was just going to have a quick chat with everyone, if that's all right.
That's fine.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Zubin from Dynamic Budgets. Just wanted to add a slightly different perspective. We have been dragging our feet on migrating over to the Business Central, and just wanted to kind of give you our perspective from a vendor's perspective. There's lots of other people who will be touting the pros and cons of Business Central. We, as an ISV, have been a little bit sidelined because of Microsoft's messaging. The initial messaging for Business Central was that it was for those, it was targeted at those that have outgrown QuickBooks and needed a kind of a QuickBooks Online on steroids type of solution. That's how they initially launched the product. For us, with people, our customers are sophisticated customers, typically 50 departments or larger. We've got customers ranging up to 20,000 departments. And we needed larger customers, mid-sized customers, to be on the platform to justify migrating over to Business Central. We had some NAV customers that migrated early over to the platform. Had some rough experiences and actually reverted back to NAV or Business Central on-prem. So we've been kind of working a little bit closer on the NAV side and waiting to see what happens with the pure Business Central Online version. So it's kind of a chicken versus the egg. As customers, some of you might be dragging your feet. Well, we don't want to get over onto the platform until all of our third-party solutions are available. And from the vendor's perspective, we've got the same mindset as well. I think we're now finally reaching the critical mass where we're getting more and more vendors to jump on board. We're starting to see an evolution of the customers in terms of size, in terms of complexity. So I think we're finally nearing that stage, and perhaps my colleagues over at Whipfly and some of the other VARs will be able to speak to a little bit more about the traction that they've had with their customers. But it's just been a little bit of a waiting game for us. So just wanted to kind of add that perspective for today.
Well, thank you. You can speak a little bit more if you'd like.
I'm going to actually turn it over to my colleagues, and if there's any questions, happy to field a question. I think Sean Dorward's had a fair amount of traction with their practice, and maybe they can add some perspective as well, perhaps down the line.
All right. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd like to let Jo resume her presentation.
Thanks, Joe.
And Zoom, and I know you have to take off. If you've got questions, please, everybody, chime in, type in a question in the chat, or raise your hand, and we'll call on you, and you can voice and video your question. All right, Jo.
Yeah, so to speak to Zubin's point of view, I don't disagree. It is not a solution for every company right now. We are all headed in that direction. It's a completely different solution, so it's not like you're going to upgrade from GP. You've got to wrap your head around the differences between how you've been set up in GP and how you'd have to be set up in BC to kind of get the same thing. And it also might be a good time to discuss how you want to change things, how things are done in your organization before you jump onto a different platform. There are some great things about BC, but it's not quite for everyone at this present time. It is great for others, though. So if you're a smaller organization, a few, maybe even not smaller, mid-sized, but I've noticed also in some of our clients that the customizations you had to have done in GP to make things work, you don't necessarily need those same things in Business Central because there's some native functionality that takes care of that. So I do recommend, if you're thinking about this highly, get in touch with someone who has experience. If that's your partner, perfect. If it's not, find someone else who knows the product fairly well so that they can dive into designing it for your organization. Discovery is a huge thing when implementing an ERP system. So make sure whoever you're working with is asking a ton of questions about how you need it set up. Okay, but back to it. I don't disagree with a lot you're going to hear today, that it's not necessarily the right solution for everyone at this point. Okay, so back into the setting up I'm back in a purchase invoice again. Oops. Too far. All right, we'll just skip all that and go to other navigation. Okay, so again, entering transactions look a little bit different in Business Central, but what I was trying to demonstrate to you guys is that you can switch up the windows to make it more comfortable for you. And there's also an area when you go to do a general ledger entry, at first it's going to look like it's all on one line, but you can make some adjustments to the window to where it looks like what you're used to, the double line entry, debit and credit. I don't have that on here in this demo today, but I do have that in some other videos I've got out there. So let's talk about adding shortcuts. One of the things a lot of people love about GP is you can add shortcuts to get to where you're going and really personalize that. So let's take a quick look at adding shortcuts in both GP and BC. So in GP, if I want to add a shortcut, and I'm just moving my quick links bar up here, it's just adding the shortcut, but I've got to know kind of where it is in GP and then kind of go find it. and then add the shortcut wherever I want it to go, whether it's quick links or, and if I'm refreshing the page so you can see the new sales batch shortcut I added, or if I want to add it in the top shortcuts bar. There's a few other places to add shortcuts in GP, but basically it's a little bit of a manual process to add shortcuts. The good news is the same thing happens in BC, only to me it's a little bit easier to add a shortcut. First of all, that search functionality in itself, these are what the shortcuts look like. But one of the things I want to show you here is that I can actually change my shortcuts, and most people can just do this in BC. They have pre-set up roles. So if you wear a lot of hats and you would have a lot of shortcuts in one role and not in the other, or by different shortcuts, you can actually change your role and it's going to change the shortcuts you see. Notice there, all the shortcuts at the top there are changing for what I need to do in this particular role. Now, that's not saying you can't create one with all of the shortcuts you need and not switch between roles. So if I wanted to add a new shortcut though, so if you see here this chart of accounts, customers, bank accounts, some other just automatic drop downs here. But what if I wanted to add a different shortcut, like to a purchase invoice that I still need to do even if I'm logged into this role? So I open up the purchase invoices to go ahead and add them. And then all it is this little bookmark right here. So I'm going to unbookmark it and bookmark it again, and then go back to the home page, which is super easy. And now, boom, the purchase invoices are right there for me to get to. It's really easy to set these up. And again, you can jump back between roles. Maybe I want to do enter sales orders now. I can jump back into a different role and have those shortcuts that are geared towards what I'm doing there all set up. Now, that is kind of a pain. If it were me, you know, I have everything set up under one role instead of switching back and forth between all of them.
Joe?
Yes.
David Musgrave is on the line from Australia, and it's close to midnight there, and he asked if he could jump in and have a few words. So, and then we'd like to move to Belinda with Sean Dorward on deck. So I'm going to have to cut this a little bit short. If you got a closing remark or two, that would help us.
Yes. So basically, the reporting looks a little bit different. There are some extras. BC integrates with a ton of other Office apps. It's really cool stuff here. The good and the bad, I'm a diehard GP fan. I love the control and the integration with my other Office apps. I don't like that there's a lack of control as far as backups, doing customizations, easily creating test companies, that sort of thing. That's the kind of stuff I'm used to in GP. I'm Joe DeRuyter, and I'm with Aisling Dynamics Business Solutions. And you just feel free, if you have any more questions about the user experience, feel free to just reach out to me and ask those. All right, there you go.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Joe. And as I said, David is logged in from Australia, Western Australia. And David, if you could turn on your mic and share your screen if you'd like.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know if it's going to show up on your screens now. So I just thought I'd give you a little bit of my opinion. I've been involved in the GP world since about 1994. I am the managing director of Winthrop Development Consultants, and I've got some great products for GP that can help you make your systems run smoother. When it comes to BC, I'm not going anywhere near it. Part of the reason is that all of the tools that I've written are very specific to GP, and they're either not relevant or just they're not needed on other products. So it is very GP specific. But GP is a very mature system. It has got a lot of flexibility. and it has a vast ISV community. And what we find is that there are a lot of people who are thinking, oh, maybe I should move to another product. Well, GP's got plenty of life left in it. They're still developing. They're still releasing new builds. And you'll probably find that a lot of the companies that are using GP are not actually using all of GP. They're probably only using a small percentage of what it's capable of. And so what they should be doing is, making sure they're using all of what GP has to offer. And then on top of that, they should be looking at what ISV products can make their lives better. I don't think there's anything that BC can do that GP either doesn't do already or can do with a third-party product. And I know the other way around, there's plenty of things that BC cannot do that GP can. The integrations, capabilities, the tools, the development tools that are available for GP, you can make it do almost anything. And I've seen some amazingly complex integrations between multiple products, between things that should never actually be linked together, that people have wanted to link together. And GP gives you the flexibility to be able to do that. You can use variety of languages, variety of tools. You can go at the interface level. You can go at the database level. So I suppose where I think Steve picked on one thing that I said, which is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's nothing wrong with GP. It's not going away. If people keep using it, Microsoft is going to keep supporting it. They're not going to turn around and just kill off 35,000 customers.
Hey, David.
So, yep.
We do have a question. What are the limitations of the BC integrations?
You don't ask me BC questions.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to answer that question when I'm done, please do.
Okay.
David, the other David's gonna talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So changing your ERP system is a massive enterprise, not just with the cost of the actual implementation from a technical perspective and having to pay your licenses and having to get it implemented, but the changeover for any customizations you've got, the integrations you've got, the retraining of your staff. I've been involved with, not because of me, but I've been involved with failed ERP upgrades or changeovers, and it cripples the business. If the business, doesn't do it right, they can be, and right now with, the world situation, the last thing you want is to risk doing that. So, unless you've got a really good need to move to a new product, if GP is doing what you want, I would stick with it. And if you want to put it into the cloud, there's plenty of ways to put it into the cloud. You can private cloud, or you can even go with, products from, there's a number of ISVs that do hosting solutions for you. So, as far as I can see, there is just no reason to go to BC unless you're a really, really simple one-person accounts payable, accounts receivable, general ledger. So I don't know. I might be biased, and I know that some of the people that my colleagues are beginning to love BC, but I just see no reason to go there.
You are definitely biased, David. Absolutely.
I am very biased. I will admit that. I mean, I'm staying with GP. It is, I suppose, I'm not going to say GP is going to go forever, but it's my built-in retirement plan. At some stage, GP will reach end of life. And hopefully by that time, whatever new solutions are available will be a smooth upgrade to, because right now going to BC is not an upgrade, it's a re-implementation.
Right, because we had a couple comments in the chat about integrations, and we'll hear about BC integrations as we go along. But I know you're pretty close to bedtime there.
Yeah, it's 22. So I just recorded my Dynamics Con session. So hopefully you'll get to see that if you guys go and watch some of the Dynamics Con stuff coming up next month.
That's right. We'll likely have a note about that during this meeting too. So
and I'll give a quick plug. I'm doing a 300 kilometer bike ride, and I've posted in a couple of places about getting sponsorship for the Riders Life Cycle for Canteen. Canteen is a organization that supports kids affected by cancer, and it's a great cause. And if you feel like sponsoring me for this 300K ride that I'm doing, please do.
excellent, thank you.
This bike ride is in pedaling, not motorbiking.
So that's David Musgrave, everyone, calling in from Perth, Western Australia, and he's got to take off. So, all right, we're going to move right along and have Belinda Allen join us. And Belinda, if you'd like to share your screen, you are welcome. But,
I will, and I am going to share a screen off to my left. So let me slide over a little bit. I'm just going to cover a few little things. I'm going to talk about BC in terms of the Power Platform. So let me share my screen. Oh, there we go. I want this screen. Okay. Very good. Okay. So I'm assuming you can see my BC screen. Yes?
Yes, we're all good.
All right, cool. Thanks. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a few things about the Power Platform in BC. It won't take very long to look at it, but one of the things that I want to point out, everyone is, David was right. I mean, a lot of your data will move, but this is a whole new system. So you have to think of it as an implementation. But one of the really cool things about this is as they were working on building it and creating this SaaS version of BC, Business Central, they did a lot of things that inherently work with the Power Platform. And that's what we're going to show you today. And the Power Platform, the Microsoft Power Platform, is Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agent. Now, I'm not going to talk about the latter two. I'm just going to talk about Power BI and Power Apps momentarily. So one thing that they did is they built in the capability to use some Power BI right inside. Now, oddly enough, I've done a lot of work with BC, but I don't really know how to use it. I only know the data structure. So I'm going to leave the BC questions to the people who know how to use it, like Sean and Joe. But if you scroll down on the main page, whoops, oh, that's Power BI. Okay, here is Power BC. So if you scroll down on the homepage in BC, I just want to show you, like, this is a Power BI visual that you're seeing right here. And if I click on this drop-down caret, you could see I could go to like the next chart and look at the next thing. And if I go to Power BI up here and I go to, whoops, wrong place. There are some pre-done apps in AppSource that you could get for free to work with it. And if I open up the sales one, you could see here is the exact same visual that we were looking at. And a lot of these visuals you could put directly on your system, right on BC, so you don't have to go anywhere. Also, if you want to create some of your own custom report, they have this very cool tool called Web Services. For any of you who, I have always loved GP and always will, but you remember the disaster that OData was. Well, let's say I want to create a link for to my data in BC. I can simply just come up to search, and this is how a lot of people navigate from page to page anyhow. And if you use the GP web page, you can also do search. And I'm going to go to services or web services. And this is where I can add in whatever I want to see. A page, for example, a page of data, which would be a list. I'm going to just grab something small here, maybe like my payment terms. Actually, that's not a very exciting one, is it? Let's search for customers. And I create a service name with the number on there. That's just a Belinda thing. But here is a URL or a OData URL that I could use inside of Excel, for example. And there's some other URLs. It creates it automatically for me. I don't have to do anything. I just come in and add a new a new page, and then all of a sudden I can access that page. So you can see I've named this one particularly Customer Card 21. So if I open up my Power BI and I go to Get Data, this is the Power BI desktop. So I'm building a report from scratch. I just want to show you how easy it is to get to your data. If I go to Online Services and Business Central, on my navigation area here, I can see my different environments. There's my sandbox. I'm going to open up production, open up my lesson company, Cronus, and I think that was 21. So, well, there it is right there, customer card. And I'm not going to go ahead and create a report, but I'm going to show you that you can see the data as it pops up. And that's how easy it is to connect to the data. Now, one amazing thing for Power BI is you do not need, and there's the customer data, you do not need to have a gateway, that on-premise gateway, to refresh your data. So you could set up refreshing automatically and it'll work just fine for you. All right, so back in the Power BI service, so we have these 3 different apps that you could download and you could access all kinds of data. I think there's a finance app. This is a CRM app. That's one thing a lot of people don't think about. It is a migration to a whole new tool, but they have a lightweight CRM built right inside of GP, so, or right inside of BC. So that's pretty cool. So there's a finance, a CRM, and a sales app. And so now quickly, I want to talk about Power Apps. And Power Apps, actually, before I do that, let me go back to BC and let me go back or go to my customer list. And you can see I don't have a lot of customers here. I'm going to add in the Titletown GPUG chapter as one of my customers. So what I'm going to do, let me open up my Air server. And one of the things that I have done here is, let me connect my iPhone. I'm going to do this for my iPhone. A lot of these connectors, because the way they built it, things like Power Apps, you could create all kinds of custom Power Apps that work and read and write directly to your data. So you can see I have the Power Apps logo right here on my phone. That's my dog Pokey behind. And so I'm opening up the Power Apps and I'm going to select that first app, BC Add New Customer. Now this is an app that I built while I was doing a user group meeting, a Power BI, Power Platform financial user group meeting for the European people, and they wanted to see how BC worked. And so one of the things, and I see your question, Christy, Sean's going to have to answer that. And so one of the things about this app in particular is it was integrating, it allowed me to enter in a new customer without even saving the app, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to click on plus up here to add a new customer. And I'm going to just create a new customer. We'll call it T001. And the display name, I didn't get real fancy because I was doing it live. And Titletown, Titletown. Is that all one word? I don't know. I'll make it 2 words. And then GPUG. Okay, and I'm going to just leave it as it rest as it is and click on done. And so now I'm going to come back into my BC and I'm just going to do a little refresh here. I don't really know the best way to refresh. So I'm going to just click on the little list here, click on close. Well, let me come in. Let me just go to finance and then I'll work my way back. You can tell I really don't know how to use the system. I only know a few things. And where's Titletown? Did I not? Oh, maybe I need an email. Test at fake.fake. This is a frequent test one. So I'll click on done. Oh, I didn't save it. I didn't save my use. I need to click on that check mark. Hello, Belinda. You know how to use an app. There we go. So now I should see Titletown down in the bottom. So now when I come over here, if I don't know how to we'll just see if we can just refresh that. There we are. And you saw I did this from my phone. I added it from my phone and then put it right in. So, I mean, that is pretty amazing, being able to do that. So the integration between the Power Platform and NBC is just, oh, thank you, Beat. F5 is the magic key. I learned something new today, so I can quit working for the day. I try to learn one thing new a day. You could see the integration between the Power Platform and BC is pretty darn cool. So I think it's just astounding. I mean, most of us, I mean, you could, in theory, run BC from your iPhone, but you would have to have really good eyes and you'd have to have really tiny fingers. So creating an app like that to do something simple, like create a customer or create a CRM contact if you're at a show. I mean, those kinds of things are invaluable. And that's really all I have to show. I just wanted to show how smooth and cool the integration between the Power Platform and BC is.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much, Belinda. And I like what you said. I try to learn one new thing every day.
I do, and I always joke if I could learn it before 7 a.m., then I could have the day off.
You live and learn, or you don't live very long.
That's right.
So I'm going to turn the floor over to your brother, Sean Dorward, and on deck.
My brother.
I'm gonna, and then on deck will be John Kirsch, your compatriot now at Dynamic Consulting.
Yeah, great stuff. Great discussions all around. I'll share my screen in just a minute, I guess, if there's anything to show, but I'll kind of touch on a few things. So I'm Sean Dorward. My name's Sean Dorward. I've been using GP for seemingly my whole life. As a toddler, I ran around with debit and credit cards. You know, it's interesting, this discussion that we're having, because I'm trying to think of an analogy, I guess. It's like we're comparing GP to BC, which I suppose, because they're both Microsoft products, is appropriate. But the interesting thing is, I think this through, is if you're on GP, you've always had the choice to leave GP to go to another product, but you didn't for one reason or another. You've always had that choice. So BC is just another option if GP isn't doing what it needs to do for you. Outside of that, I'm hard pressed to find a reason that someone should be, you know, if to look at BC without a reason is a head scratcher, right? Just, you know, whether Microsoft's knocking on the door or partners are kind of trying to give you motivation to move to Business Central, that's seemingly irrelevant if I was a business owner. If it's doing what I need it to do, I pay for it. I've been paying for it. If it's going to continue to meet my needs, why look at anything else, you know? So, you know, I hear some folks say BC isn't for everyone, and that's very true, but GP is not for everyone either. It's like, even though I've been using GP for a very long time and Business Central for about 5 years, they're different. They're not, you know, it's almost like they're competing products in a sense, because they're different. Microsoft's messaging is one that kind of implies that it's an upgrade or a migration of sorts, but I think, to me, and I think I've heard others say it is a new implementation. So it's a big decision. It's not going to happen in 1 week. Neither did your implementation to GP. The process is very similar. I will debunk some rumors, though, about Business Central straight out of the gate. If someone tells you that it doesn't do everything GP does, I strongly disagree with that. Admittedly, the key difference is the ISV availability is very different. So if you use jobs or fixed assets or manufacturing or service, or any functionality of an ERP system is in Business Central. That is just true. There were some times when Microsoft only surfaced some of the functionality early on, but for a couple of years now, that's just not been the case. And we're seeing large businesses, in the cloud functioning well and improving their business day in and day out. It's fully development ready and has been. It's a language called AL, has its own extensions. They're called, that's the development term there. So if you have something you want to make your own, add a field, remove a field, those kind of things, that you build an extension. That's the development methodology. And there are, hundreds of people writing that code, writing some pretty impressive things, even full modules that kind of are their own. And the reality is that Business Central is sort of just a renaming of Nav or Navision. Now Navision is definitely different than Business Central, but 80% of it is not. It's 80% of it is the same. So it's not a new product, it's a new approach. So we're here today to talk about GP and BC and the differences. And I think, it's like, you don't have to make that decision unless you have a reason to be shopping. And if you're shopping, I think it's important to say, why am I shopping? And what is it that I'm looking for? 99% of the time, people are shopping because of the cloud. I mean, the reality is, it's a tough conversation, right? Because everything we do, and I know I'm no different than anyone else, everything we do is mobile, everything. We're having this meeting on, virtually. We're given the tools to access the information we want, where we want it, and how we want it. That's this meeting. Yes, it is true that GP can go into the cloud, but it is not true that GP is mobile. And try to articulate some of what I mean there is, yes, you can go in the cloud, meaning it's not on your own hardware in your storage room or in your server closet. It's on a server farm in one of Microsoft's buildings. But mobile is different than cloud. So in GP, if you were to surface it to the cloud, you're going to access it through some tool, and you get the robust full desktop on-premises installation of GP, but it lives somewhere else. Mobile in Business Central. Now I'm going to share my screen. Don't mind the mess on my desktop here, but I'm going to try to share my screen so that you can see. Why is technology so difficult sometimes? Here, Business Central. Here, Business Central. Here it is.
If you take your hot pink Post-it notes off your screen, you'd see it.
You know me way too well. Way too well. All right, so let me share my screen here. I wanted to share because there's a couple things that are important about what I'm trying to say when I say mobile. And mobile this is the Business Central desktop app. Let's see, where did it go? Why can I never find it after I have it open? There it is. This is the desktop app. And here, Business Central, I think Joe was showing it's accessible on a web browser. But you don't necessarily need to use a web browser. You can use the desktop app. And let's see if I can get my phone here. Now, bear with me just a second. And this is important, I think, to show what I mean by mobile versus in the cloud. So I'll share my fancy dancy iPhone, which I've never used before, but my kids have me convinced I have no choice. But this is Business Central on my iPhone. And you see that this is Business Central on the desktop. This is Business Central on my iPhone. That's mobile, where we're rendering the information differently to conform to the device we're using. If you were to access GP on your phone, you would have that desktop compressed. It's already hard to see on a 30-inch monitor, compressed down. Now, so just a key point about what I meant by mobile. So I noticed there were a couple questions in the queue that kind of ran through. And I took some notes from some of the things I was seeing. And Steve, feel free to give me the hook if I'm just talking over others' times. So one thing for sure is, whether it's accounts payable, purchasing, warehousing, location management, inventory management, manufacturing, field service, the truth is Business Central has it all. So does GP. I'm not saying it's better. It's different. They're not the same. They're different. And also limitations to integrations. I do disagree with that as well. We're integrating tens of thousands of transactions from some customers weekly, not so much daily, but weekly. And there's no limitations to it. The limitation to a sense is the database size, which is 80 gigs. And I don't know anyone who's come close to that. Maybe some of the folks from Wipfli might know, but I haven't seen anything like that. In terms of CRM, there is a product in Business Central called Relationship Manager, which manages leads and opportunities, which you can then promote to a quote. And then you can win the quote, which translates to an order. And all that's included in your licensing. The licensing is excludes service and manufacturing, but everything else is included. You have to upgrade your $70 license to a $100 license for manufacturing and service. That CRM, that light CRM or relationship manager, does complement to some degree CE, customer engagement, or formerly known as CRM, or whatever we want to call it, because the again, multi-name syndrome here, Common Data Service or Dataverse is integrated for those entities, accounts, contacts, etc., so that the information can flow back and forth out of the box from Business Central. So that's just a little bit of my thoughts on Business Central. Let's see if I have anything else I wanted to point out here. Hang on just a second. Oh, yes, I did, most certainly. So really important to me because I see and I hear from folks a lot about the kind of push they're getting as a GP customer. It is my opinion, it is my unvetted opinion, that if your partner or Microsoft are trying to push you off of GP and it's something you're not comfortable doing, put the brakes on. It is your decision. And it should never be somebody else's decision as a business owner or business decision maker. Not just for your ERP, for other things. You wouldn't let somebody else tell you, how to build your widget. You decide as your own business. There is no requirement. There's no hard and fast requirement.
What are the kickbacks that you're getting offered?
Say again?
Microsoft is offering really good kickbacks to partners to push their clients off GP.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. We don't engage that way anyway. We don't push people off of GP, so we wouldn't even hear that. I don't know. Maybe others have.
Yeah, but that's part of why partners are pushing it, because Microsoft is trying to push people off and is giving really good, kickbacks to partners.
What David's saying is true. I recently got 2 new clients for the same thing. Their partners contacted them and told them they had to upgrade to BC. So they went looking for somebody that would still support GP, because it's they are offering a goodly amount of kickbacks for it.
I haven't heard anything about kickbacks, but I mean, the reality is Microsoft would want them to move to BC. Their cloud initiative is a very big deal to them. And so the encouragement is certainly there. That is the biggest reason why for all my Power Platform work, I've moved to BC from GP. I still do some GP, but they don't want to push anybody. They'd rather you be on GP than on another system. So they're happy about that. But there are some unscrupulous salespeople that are directly connected with Microsoft that will, to obtain their goals so that they could get, or their numbers, they will say things that don't directly line up. But I don't know that there's kickbacks for partners. I mean, there might be some enticements, but I don't think it's kickbacks.
I haven't heard of it, but sometimes if it's the discussion that you don't want to be a part of, maybe you just don't here, because that's really, as a former business owner myself, and an end user of GP for so long, I empathize with the seat that everyone is sitting in. You're hearing all this stuff. It's like the feeling of, I just paid off my car and now they're trying to force me to buy a new one. It's my decision on what I want to do with my ERP investment, and if it meets my needs, I'm not here to say that you should consider leaving GP and going to Business Central. In fact, quite the opposite. However, if GP is not meeting your needs, then I would think that it's fair for you to look and say, well, what does Business Central bring to the table in that competitive space? Because we're all in the Microsoft, this is a Microsoft area, so we tend to think very single lane, and there are other options. There's not just Ford or Dodge. You're not obligated to. So Microsoft had created this competitor of some others in its same ecosystem, so that if you wanted to take another ERP because of X, Y, and Z, that you had the option. Another rumor I'll kind of debunk, I think I heard it said, and the more you experience something, the more kind of truth telling you have of your own, right? So I remember thinking BC can't do everything, or that it's not much different than QuickBooks. It is very different than QuickBooks. It is a full-blown, very robust ERP system, just like GP. They're not the same. They're different. And that's my story, and I guess I'll stick to it for now.
Thank you, Sean. That is exactly where I wanted this this whole session to go. So we get the interchange.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What is the licensing structure compared to GP?
So for Business Central, it's a subscription model. You have a minimum subscriptions that you have to buy, one, and it's $70 a month per user forever. That does not include manufacturing or the service module. If you want to include those two, both of them at the same time, it's $100 per user. You can have, there's also things called device licenses. So imagine you have a terminal that you want to interact with customers where they take orders and you're creating sales invoices right away that push back in your system. Very common functionality. You can use a device license there. I think those are, I think they're $8, maybe $20. I don't know. They're significantly cheaper. A Teams user, which is someone who can create a purchase quote, which is the same as purchase requisition, and some other things. Those users are $8 per month. So it's very, very affordable. There is an ROI. If you were comparing purely license to license and expense for infrastructure, there is an ROI threshold. But I don't think that's the fair comparison, because that shouldn't be the reason you're moving, just because you want to get into a subscription model. And GP, most people are paying their annual maintenance and they have fees for so many users. You need the starter pack, etc. So I would definitely, if you want to look at it, what would it cost me in Business Central? I would get with your partner and have them do a GP to BC license comparison. Probably I would look that out 3 to 5 years too. I wouldn't look at it as just year one. I would look at a 3 to 5 year.
I had a little something to add there, is that they are named users, so there's no, it's not whoever's logged in, it's the named users. And the other thing is that Microsoft is offering that you can pay your GP licenses monthly now as well, to kind of counteract that whole SaaS model.
That's true. Very true. Named users, and they're handled a little, it's your Microsoft Azure Active Directory account. And what that does, that single user, that named user, the benefit of it is that authenticates you in Outlook, so you can interact with Business Central and Outlook, which is quite sharp, by the way. It gives you the single sign-on ability to interact with Business Central data in Excel or Power BI. So there is kind of it is different, and it is a little bit of a hook right at the beginning when you're first thinking of it. But when you look at the big picture, the reason is because all of that single user flows through all these applications, which is quite nice. Very different. Very different.
All right. We would like to take, or I would like to have you take, everybody, a 5-minute break before we get to John Kirsch. Everybody that's been presenting, if you can hang in there and provide extra dimension to our discussion, we would love that you do that. And so we will start off with John Kirsch in 5 minutes. So that makes about 10:16 on my clock. So take a break and we'll resume.
Steve.
But, yes,
I was going to add a comment about the partners pushing the BC. When I went on my own 2 years ago, I subscribed with a major resell VAR in the US, and I made them clearly understand that I was in the business for GP licensing and everything else, and they had absolutely no objection about it. But ever since I registered and subscribed with them, all the news, all the presentation, all the regular meetings we get is all about CRM and BC. There was little or no sessions or informational about GP itself, or as Sean said, it's Microsoft is really pushing the GP customers out the door, and even trying to incite them into subscribing to BC by offering alternative licensing modes for GP. In a short, I would say that existing customers that are happy and don't lack functionalities in GP should not look at BC for now, because simply it is probably from a cost point of view much more expensive. Essentially, soon as you get above a certain threshold of licensing, knowing that the minimum licensing is $70 a month, and that doesn't give you even the full functionalities that you have in GP. And mostly you will end up with the $100 a user per month. You can quickly make up your calculation on how much this is going to cost you on a yearly basis versus keeping your GP maintenance plan active and going forward with GP, which is still strong for lots of customers. Keep in mind there used to be an implemented basis of 45,000 GP customers around the world, mainly in the US, but that was the numbers I recall back in the mid 2015 or 2010s years, and I do still believe there is a strong basis of GP users. Honestly, since I started my own consulting business, I have been pushed by many VARs or fan GP customers because they don't support them anymore. Even locally, I have talked to major GP VARs, and I mean GP VARs and Microsoft VARs in general, that have ditched the GP business completely and focusing on business and every other aspects of the cloud ERP solutions from Microsoft. And I'm just inheriting all those GP clients because they don't know where to turn anymore, because most major partners don't support them anymore.
Well, it's certainly been an ongoing effort, because even at Summit, the Microsoft keynote addresses would always be about other stuff, not GP.
Right.
I have some comments on that, Beat. I mean, first of all, GP is not going anywhere. My comment that Microsoft would like for GP users to move to BC, their stance is also that if BC is not for you, then stay on GP. It's not going anywhere. They still have a commitment to it. It's not going anywhere. Look at SL. Effectively, SL kind of ended years and years ago, but Microsoft still maintains it, still provides upgrades for it and everything. But the ROI is more than just the cost per user per month compared to the maintenance fee. There's also the cost of upgrading your system every time there's an upgrade around. There's the cost of maintaining a server, having a room for a server, paying the electricity to keep the server cool, any kind of access tools you use, like PC Anywhere to access the data wherever the case may be. The infrastructure of just maintaining security for your GP, installing GP on people's desktops or notebooks as they work. There are so many things you have to think about as part of that ROI, and it really and downtime, user downtime. You're right. SQL, the SQL Cal licenses and maintaining and upgrading a SQL. There is a point where having a SaaS system is less expensive than an on-prem system. But GP is stinking awesome, and BC is very different. And the short story is, if GP works for you and you're not ready to move and you don't need to go into the cloud, then stay on GP. And if you have any partner, or more important, any Microsoft employee or someone who says that they work with Microsoft telling you otherwise, then you definitely reach out to an MVP and tell us, and we will report them, because they should not be doing anything that makes you think the GP is going away. Until Microsoft makes a formal announcement, that is not the case. And David Musgrave is right. If you want your GP in the cloud, there are some great solutions like Ingevity and WantServe. And Ingevity, I still love them. I worked for them for 3 years, and they even can make it a SaaS version of GP. So you can still have a lot of the really cool benefits of having APIs and having cool integrations and doing things like that with Ingevity's Power GP Online. And then WantServe people, Tyler, his team, they're awesome as well. So you still have a lot of opportunities. Short story, GP is not going anywhere, but according to all of the big research groups that I've seen, a SaaS model is less expensive to run after it only takes a couple of years than an on-prem model. And there's it may not seem like it, but when you start adding all those costs in, it adds up. And I saw from Whipley shaking his head there for a brief moment. Yeah, there you are.
Yeah. So I just want to piggyback off that, right? You're right. So I think there are some benefits as well there, and it's that $70 a user, right? They're offering discounts with it as well, and really that $100 gets into when you're using manufacturing and service, and we've done a 5-year analysis of keeping GP versus Business Central, so there is some ROI in that as well, but nobody should be pushing you. It should be more educational, and that's what we try to do here at Whipley. When we talk to you about this, we're educating you on, if you have a cloud strategy, where do you want to go? And it's just not Business Central. There are other cloud-based ERP products that you can look into if you are moving to a new system, right? So people should be educating you about what's out there, not pushing you.
That's true.
Right.
I don't disagree, Belinda.
Yeah.
I have myself moved a couple customers off their on-prem GP systems just because their system hardware was old and needed to be replaced. So they made some calculations. And personally, we ended up moving them to Azure because they were in control of the cost. They had access to GP from anywhere, and they could budget for that on a long run. And Microsoft is offering some good incentives on long-term renting the Azure space or infrastructure by giving you discounts of 25-30% if you book your systems you commit for your systems for 1 or 3 years. So all in all, it is, as Patel said, it is important to do your ROI, do the calculation on a long-term range of 3 to 5 years, as you used to do it with every software expense or CapEx investment.
All right, I'm going to let's put a pin on this discussion. This is amazing. And I was very happy to see that start and take off. But I'd like to give some time to John Kirsch right now. He's a associate now of Dynamic Consulting and Sean Dorward. So, John, take it away.
All right, hit that unmute button first, and that works a lot better. So, all right, so I am sharing my screen. We should be able to see a little slideshow, which I actually didn't have prepared until the start, and I saw others had one. So I just also finished a recording like David mentioned. I grabbed a couple of slides off of there to talk. So, I'm going to actually first, because this is a Green Bay chapter, I want to say thank you, because there's at least a couple, I think, on the call here that we just had a big nonprofit fundraising event, and a lot of folks that are local have heard me talk about Golden House and being involved in that. So thank you to anybody that contributed to the Give Big campaign in Green Bay, where the Packers do a bunch of matching for organizations around the area. So want to say a big thank you for anybody that gave to that, and just impressive. In 24 hours, the Green Bay area raised over $2 million for 45 nonprofits. And then there was a whole bunch of matching that goes on top of it. So thank you to everybody involved in that. So I want to just put a quick plug in for that. We'll jump into the topic. So yeah, this is a great discussion. We all had our little topics here, so I'll try to set this up. David, I know, is coming after me, so I'll hopefully leave it in a good spot to go from kind of the evaluation process into kind of the migration or implementation. But I had a couple of things and a couple of notes I jotted down as some of the other discussions. And I've worked with GP at a customer, a user of GP, for a majority of my time. I've been a consultant for 7 years, but 22 years of using GP. So my focus, whether now doing consulting, but I always put myself in the shoes of using GP. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm viewing myself as part of that company. And to me, it's almost two different conversations, largely I'm a part of. One where we're looking at BC and somebody is either really interested in it, is on this side of the fence, or also if we're on a marketing, whether from Microsoft or whether it's a partner that's really pushing to go to BC or whatever that discussion is, there's the interest in the product for whatever that reason is. And then there is kind of the other side of the fence where I don't need to change ERPs. It's doing what I need to do. It's really not even a thought process right now. My business is functioning well. Maybe I can make it a little bit better by doing, X, Y, or Z. But it's working. It's doing. Our company is doing what it needs to do. It's successful. ERP is not something that I forget who said it. I want to credit one of the Davids, either David on our DC team or maybe David Musgrave. But I've heard it a couple of times of, you don't wake up and think, hey, I'm going to change my ERP because I want something to do today, right? It's a big decision. The implementation. We've been talking about cost, but there's obviously an implementation project and cost, and so I agree. Some of the messaging Sean and others just said is, if somebody's pressuring to say switch because of, that's what we're supporting now, or, that's the cool thing to do, whatever the reason is, that's got to be a decision that's made, that there's a benefit for you, that there's a need for it. Your company is changing, it's growing, it needs some other functionality. Those are things that drive us to change an ERP system and go through an implementation project. Otherwise, there's so many other things in business to focus on, with growing your business, with, serving your customers, with, whatever those pieces might be that you do on a daily basis. Those are the things that, that most business owners and people in the business, and, that's what the regular focus is. So, to me, a lot of times that discussion, I mean, I certainly agree with the comment as well of education, though. It's important to know what's going on. What are the offerings out there? I definitely spend some time, staying educated, keeping an eye on what's going on, looking for possibilities, but, doing that with your goals as the main focus. So with that kind of overwhelming kind of theme, I guess, for my couple of more minutes here, I have the slide up there. My biggest thing in my topic kind of is around, selection process, kind of moving towards the implementation. This slide isn't exactly on that topic, but a little overview on Business Central. I heard several say it already. It's not an upgrade. That's the thing to definitely consider and understand. We've maybe hit that a little bit already, so don't have to drill on it too hard. But there are different features. The way it works, even if it covers some of the same modules, which it does, but it does things differently. BC may be a better fit. GP may be a better fit. It has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And I almost laughed a little bit. Steve, kind of in the summary, I think of asking us to help, or on some of the promos kind of said, well, we want a little bit of a kind of help us, give a nutshell of what we should be thinking about, or what's the answer to it. And the answer is truly, it's different for everybody. You've really got to do the evaluation and go through it. So I have on the bottom GP migration tool. I'm going to just go to the second slide I have and talk about really kind of the selection and implementation project. So the core part, the top kind of bullet, sub-bullet there, evaluation of functionality. It has to be done. Got to look at what you want out of a system. If you're comparing GP to BC or just doing an open comparison or review of what's out there, you have to evaluate it. I added this little piece in our break here, the Microsoft effort around functionality. So, we were kind of having a discussion there at the end around incentives. I do want to mention, Microsoft does have a small team, I believe it is, but a team that is calling some GP customers and, talking to them directly about GP and BC and evaluation process, and even as I understand it, I don't have kind of direct links to this happening, but offering some evaluations that are out there. So, we've been telling our customers this. I encourage that for everybody. If you're, we're not the partner of you, whoever is your partner, my recommendation is talk to them. They know your system. They work with you. Again, assuming they're, having a similar mindset that they're going to look out for what's best, whether that's GP, BC, whatever, and that may mean. But if you're reaching out and doing that, definitely get a good review of the systems if you're going to consider a move. And I think a perfectly fine answer, we certainly say that, is GP is working great. I'm not interested right now. So just be aware that's out there, and so there is an effort around that, and so there may be some contact around it, but it's really a standard implementation project after that. So kind of finishing up my topic, you've gone through an implementation of GP probably. Sorry if I said that right now, too many short letter acronyms. You've gone through GP implementation if you were there at your company when it went in. If you were going to switch to BC, it's going to be that same structure of a project. You're going to need to do full business requirements, data migration. So the migration tool, I think David's going to talk about it, so I'm not going to talk too much, but it can help. But that's a part of the plan. It could be the major part of the plan maybe, but it's still, you need a full data migration plan of how you're going to handle that. You're definitely going to need training. You're going to need to test that and then ultimately go live and support for that. So, there's not a magic upgrade wand. It's clearly not an upgrade. It's an implementation to do a switch like that. So the effort, the cost, the organizational change that you go through to put that in all applies like any other system implementation. So I think others have already touched on, a little bit around, apps, add-ons, ISVs, different terminology and extensions for customization. So I will kind of, I guess, leave it at that. I don't see any questions since I've been in there. So so I think I'll wrap up. Certainly happy to continue to be part of the discussion here, but want to leave time for everybody else as well.
All right. John, thank you. Thank you very much. We will, right, I don't see any questions specifically in the chat, but it's always nice to have you as a resource. And I speak from the experience of many GPUG meetings in Green Bay. John has been one of the most constant and supportive members of our group. Next, we'd like to turn it over to David Laster, from Greyvach out in Massachusetts. And I've mentioned him as the author of the first Management Reporter book that I ever bought. And that was a while ago, David. It's still in your curriculum vitae, though. So please share your screen and take it away.
Excellent. It's great to be here. And this time, I'm not trying to do that silly day trip thing from Boston to Green Bay and back like I did last time for your Power BI group. Meeting virtually means I don't have to be on the plane getting de-iced for the first time in the season. But Eric, Steve, thanks for having me. My name is David Laster, and I've been working with and implementing Great Plains and using it as a user since 1999. So I'm at 22 years finally this month. I love it. I've upgraded companies. I'm more of a system administrator, but I'm a full spectrum Dynamics GP consultant, if you will. I have a number of customers that are implementing Business Central. We're demoing it very frequently, so there's a significant amount of interest out there. But I certainly like, the GP world, and I want to contribute to our discussion today by maybe sharing out my screen here and talking a little bit about the GP migration process. Let me see if I can get this shared out the right way here. You should see my Business Central here, Steve, when that pops up.
Yep, we see it just fine.
All right, excellent. So I got a lot of color commentary. I don't have many slides. I got a couple things to share, but hopefully I got 4 topics. We'll get through this here and hopefully walk away with some knowledge. So the first thing that's important to note is that you don't have a hardware requirement. When you sign up with Business Central, it's all service provided in the cloud. You log into a website, you have provision and paid licenses. Yes, you can get a 30-day trial option. You can even have that extended. The prices are fairly reasonable at $70 and $100 a month. But what happens when you get a subscription, right? Ultimately, that's your new home. That's essentially not your new server, but that's what we call your new tenant. Okay. Your tenant administrator is somebody who's an Azure admin. Those of us in the Great Plains world don't have to work in the Azure admin platform that often. We're more on the Active Directory and the local network administration. So this is a little bit of a different change for us. But in the tenant, which is, I do have a slide of the tenant, but the tenant is where you create your environments. You can have a production environment. You can actually have a couple of different sandbox environments. Let me pull this slide up here so that you can see. This is a screenshot of what the administration center looks like. If you're going to log in and install Dynamics GP, this is essentially where you really log in and install and manage your Business Central environment. This is your communication mechanism also for monitoring your storage limits. Your tenant is maxed out at an 80 gigabyte limit before Microsoft effectively will come knock on the door and work with you to try to work through relieving some of that space through some other method. This is where notification of recipients for upcoming updates is managed. If you've got a team of people that needs to know, hey, there's an update coming out, they'll let you know. You get to choose what windows apply to apply updates. A lot of times you want to do those off hours because it is a service. You don't choose necessarily other than the window that you get your service packs applied, but they happen frequently. They happen really pretty smoothly, and you really don't have to think about it, but you get notified. It's a neat place. That's where you have to go and issue support tickets. Like if you have a technical problem and you have to go to Microsoft and it's not the way that we're used to as Dynamics folks through Partner Source, even though that's changing. We have a portal through the admin center where you log a ticket. I've had to log a couple. I think the folks have been incredibly helpful, just like the folks in Fargo always have on the Great Plains side. So topic number 2 is really the Great Plains to Business Central migration process. Let me move this back out of the way here for a moment. So part of Business Central is this opportunity they call extensions. Okay, extensions are to us ISV products, independent software vendor solutions. Like we all generally have sometimes 3, 5, even 10 of them, sometimes more, depending on your environment. But these extensions essentially allow more functionality within Business Central. Some extensions in particular are used for the cloud migration. Okay, and the cloud migration here, you see I've got it lit up here as Business Central Cloud Migration. There's a couple of different extensions here that kind of work together depending on where you're migrating from. We said earlier the word QuickBooks. We Great Plains have always absorbed a lot of QuickBooks customers over the years. And I heard QuickBooks, on steroids online essentially earlier. And there is a QuickBooks migration tool, and we've done a number of these as well. I think the QuickBooks migration is not nearly as robust as the GP migration tool is. So food for thought in that regard. So once you add an extension, then you have the capability to put what they call the SURE, the self-hosted integration runtime service. It lives on a server on your network. It drops in an encrypted token and key that connects to your on-premise Dynamics and company databases. So once it sees those company databases, you can set up a schedule. The schedule essentially gets clicked off. You can run it daily, you can run it weekly. And it looks at some key setup tables in Dynamics GP with regards to your master records. Particularly of interest, for me as somebody responding to companies who are interested in migrating is, what fits? Does it all go? What goes? And I've gone through the process of these and I've documented, and I'll share some screenshots in a couple of moments on this. But you set up the self-hosted runtime, you connect it to your database, you set the schedule, and then periodically you're going to see updates essentially come into the Business Central environment. I have now changed my page and I'm displaying my cloud migration management page. And this is from a migration I performed quite some time back here. And where you kind of manage the migration, you can set different items to run. There's some neat little like Power BI-like tiles and statistics that kind of hang off on the right side here, telling you about errors and messages and successes and failures. So it's pretty interactive, and you can reschedule integrations and turn them off. At the end of the day, you want to load stuff into here and ideally turn it off and then kind of work with what you have there. The couple of key concepts in this migration that's important to note. The fully qualified account string that we know and love and hate sometimes in Dynamics GP goes away. It's a fundamental difference starting at the chart of accounts. You have a main account segment that you map because GP has the main account segment. You map that, and then your other segments effectively get mapped to what they call dimensions. You're going to get two default dimensions that are essentially the global dimensions. And ultimately, what that means is that you're going to be able to post to those two dimensions in addition to the chart of account, the main account number, for every entry. They'll be on every screen, and every report is a filter. It's a nice function. There are other dimensions, right? Sometimes you might have an account string that's got like 5 or 6 different segments. So what do we in GP do about those other segments? We effectively map those to what they call shortcut dimensions. You have a maximum of 8, 2 global plus 6 shortcuts, effectively as part of the general ledger setup that you can track and report your GL distributions on, if you will. So key difference in there. The migration tool brings over customers and fits them into the customer card. I do have a screenshot of kind of what that looks like here. Because when I look at the master records, of course, you don't want to miss anything. Let me pull the GP customers one up here. All right, so here's the Business Central page in terms of the customer. And I try to mark these up, like what does it look like in BC after it's been migrated? A couple of notes here, it's kind of a theme on the master records in general. The name field, GP has a longer name field than Business Central does. So if you've got customers or vendors or items that the name is longer than Business Central can house, it's got a smaller shoe in that field. We got to kind of work through how to accommodate any sort of, naming conventions related to that. I noticed that there's no address line 3 on the address cards. So I find that a little bit interesting. The address fields are shorter, so that could affect every address in your system. We do create customers, we do create contacts, we do create ship to and bill to addresses. So it is a pretty handy device, especially in terms of taking what you have and getting it to that cloud and maybe taking advantage of that 30-day trial just to kind of see what it really is about. So the migration tool brings over open POs. It brings over open vendor transactions net, open customer transactions net. That way you essentially, and I've done this, you do the migration and you run your AR trial balance out of both Great Plains and Business Central, and they match. The detailed trial balances and summary trial balances match. They're different looking reports, but the numbers and the data matches for every one of those records. Open purchase orders can come in now. Checkbooks as well as uncleared transactions in those checkbooks are part of the migration process. The intelligent cloud, which a lot of us who have the later versions of GP, you see on the homepage, they will show this extra homepage that effectively allows you to connect your GP data through that SURE to your Business Central tenant and allow you to pull some analytical information back into your essentially homepage, your second homepage in Dynamics GP. And it's kind of neat. You know, the power of the cloud really is really kind of fascinating. So to see those insights show up is encouraging. I think the third point I want to make is validation of your data. Once it's in Business Central, you know, kind of then what? There's still there's a good number of setups and things that you want to go through inside of Business Central, like your posting groups, your sales people, your territories, any additional banking information, electronic banking information, right? Especially for any vendors that you currently pay EFT through, that doesn't migrate, right? We got to reset that whole stuff up as a vendor in order to pay your vendor in Business Central. So little things to think through that actually add up to be really kind of a significant process. One thing that I've been doing, and I don't know, I know Belinda didn't go too deeply into it, but I'll give her all the credit because she's my Power BI guru here, is you can connect Power BI reports to your Business Central tenant. And look, there's a neat color scheme that's available so that you can make your Business Central Power BI reports look and feel a lot like essentially the color scheme inside of Business Central. So I've been using this to essentially pull in kind of a dashboard style, all of the different lists and things to kind of proof that my setups are right in some of these environments. It's been pretty helpful. A couple of ideas, topic 4 to be mindful of. These are fundamentally different systems. This is not an upgrade. This is a start over with a kick in the pants. All right, you get a lot of the data that migrates. If it fits, great. You still get the chance to clean it up before you go live. I can't stress that you should move at your own pace. This is not just a quick upgrade and go. It thinks differently. You know, when you get good at Great Plains, it's because you've done it a long time. You spent your 4,000 or 5,000 hours or whatever, and you can think like Great Plains. Going back to try to learn Business Central, I've been doing it since 2018 now. It's only been 3 years, and it's really hard to think like a whole new system. But having Great Plains experience, knowing what it can do and can't do, is really helpful for evaluating and trying out and going through those trainings and those sample runs with customers. Navigation is very different. Joe did a great job of discussing that. Lots of testing and training you want to do to make sure that not just everything works through, but then you can get it back out later. What do you do? How do you correct? You know, what does it look like to print reports? How do you reprint a sales invoice? Things are a little bit different, so it takes some getting used to. Customization tools are different. The language is different. It's an AL. We use VS Code and some Docker techniques. I leave that to all the developers because that's their language, but it's not the same sort of development tools that we use with Great Plains and SQL, because we really don't have that SQL thing like we used to being in the cloud. It has a lot of functionality that Great Plains doesn't. It has different functionality. It's all worth taking a look at if you have any sort of interest in it. The accounting, the debits and the credits behave a little bit differently. So you want to watch that when you are doing your testing in terms of words of advice. I think it's a pretty reasonable option for companies that are really looking at ERP in general. But if you're already rooted in GP and GP is a fine product for you, you go through your self-evaluation, but also work with your partner. Can't stress how important it is to work with a good partner. They will help get you there faster. They will help you get there successfully, and they will help make sure that you avoid the pitfalls that you would really try to do if you're trying to do some of these things on your own. So again, Steve, thanks for letting me come and join your conversation today, and I appreciate all the great input that we've heard so far.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Hey, I don't mean to interrupt again. It's my forte, though. But David, that was amazing. But I don't know if since you've got your screen shared,
yeah,
I had wanted to show people some stuff about reporting and the fact that there's a guided setup. The whole guided setup was very comforting to me.
Nope, I went to the online help. Sorry about that. There we go. Here's the assisted. So there's really two types of setup in Business Central, right? One of them is the assisted setup, and they're very wizardy. They're kind of nice, actually. So good point here is where you connect to Dynamics 365 for sales. You can synchronize your customers and your opportunities and some of your invoicing and orders information through the Dataverse using these options here. Cloud migration is here. You notice I've been through this. This is where you do the Great Plains or the QuickBooks migration to the cloud. Very wizardy, very much like the checklist is in Great Plains. But this one is kind of broken apart between the assisted setup and then there's some manual, more heavy duty, more like, I guess, esoteric or one-off types of setups. Good point, Joe.
We have a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah.
Pam, have you got a handle on those?
I don't have a handle on them all because some were answered in the chat and some weren't in the chat. So there was, I think, Jennifer, there was a list. Did you want to go through that? And then anybody else that has a question that has not been answered, can you raise your hand so we can get to you? If you don't know how to raise your hand, it's the little smiley face with a hand by it at the top, right by the chat. So put your hand up and be heard.
Can I jump in right away on the reporting side? Because I talked a little bit about that. So Jennifer, hi Jennifer, you see the questions there. I'll kind of touch on the top two a little bit. Obviously others will jump in and comment, but and I guess I can turn my video back.
Can you read her question too, so that?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So the question, reporting and extracting information, we use Management Reporter and Smart Lists a ton. Does this functionality exist in BC? Then I'm going to read the second one right away too, because I'll probably kind of ramble these two together. But can reportings like trial balance, historical stock status, etc., take a long time to run in GP? In BC, can we assume this canned reporting exists and that they don't take a long time to generate? So talking about reporting, first, I guess I'll take the Smart List one because that was also kind of being asked right now. There is more and more push to generate some of the Smart Lists. There are list views, so there's both Smart Lists kind of coming, to age, I guess, into BC, and so that has certainly been, as Microsoft has looked at GP and BC, a strength of GP and trying to add that functionality into BC as well. So there is, some of that in growing, I would say. And then obviously a lot of our friends at E1 with their PopDoc solution, I do think is a good one, kind of across the board. So do highly, kind of recommend looking into that at a minimum, as far as kind of some even more extensive functionality as far as using cloud tools for reporting. So there is some in growing, I would say, as kind of a short summary on that. But as a GP person reporting, and I see some other comments in there, for me, I've written a ton of complex reports with GP, and having access to SQL and using tools that are out there like choosing between Excel, SSRS, Power BI, and Crystal at times and others, having that direct database access, it's still not matched with the cloud solution. I know there's a ton of other tools, there's different options. There's Jet, there's, we can rattle off a handful of them, quickly here for tools that we can use for reporting. But for, folks that have really kind of lived and utilized SQL, and I've maximized the power of SQL to create faster reports, it's just not the same. So there are other ways, but it gets much more complex if we start data warehousing data or, going to extra steps to get there. So there are options to get there. It is not as straightforward, on as it is for a DB admin to have that direct database admin. So that's a big difference from my standpoint in reporting. As far as the last piece there, just speed of the reports. I mean, there are there's some things on the GP side to that can be looked at, different ways of running those reports too with Excel reporting and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into troubleshooting discussion there. There's a whole different posting difference though with BC, not having the subledger and really posting kind of directly to the GL, if you will, in kind of one set of tables. So I look at things on the technical side, so it's a completely different structure in there. So there is, there's a difference the way reports are run, even with the closing process. I'll leave that to others to talk about, but there is less data, tends to the raw side of it is probably a little bit faster, but then there's also the cloud and getting the data where you're going to use it. So that's a tough variable to just answer one off. So
Can I
I'll
go
pause
ahead and
there,
share
let
my
others.
screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'll show you guys kind of what we're talking about. It's a matter of kind of switching your focus. You're used to smart lists, but really this is my customer list. Like if I went to sales and then customers, this is kind of my smart list, right? So I've got kind of a ton of information about the customer over here, not really having to drill down, but reports live up here. So if I wanted to see the reports related to my customers, sales reports, they're all kind of just here on the customer page. And then there's also cool stuff like, do I want to open or edit this particular customer in Excel and stuff like that? But the reports are here. So it's kind of like a difference in where you're going to find them, but a lot of them are here and they look pretty good. I haven't been able to dive in to editing the reports yet, or I also want to see if I can add columns here.
You can.
But obviously I can kind of see what's going on here. So if maybe David Laster wants to share and tell us if he knows how to edit reports in case it's not working. But I don't have a ton of data in my system, but they does seem to all be here.
And I want to throw one quick caveat. Sorry, if I can, and I'll be quiet then. My thought is some of those analysis type reports, some of those custom reports, I'm really talking about, the reports in both systems, I'll say, are generally there for your default reports and lists and things like that. But in the end, if we're using the system and pulling data from it, we have some sort of analysis report specific to your grouping, your customers, your whatever you're doing things. So I look at it's pretty comparable kind of on the base side as far as just different navigation. But when I talk about creating the more complex reports, the stuff that's really going to be impactful, that's where my piece was kind of speaking at getting at the data, organizing it. So just a little caveat in there.
To me, I think that would be like a Power BI type thing.
Yeah, and you can always build custom reports like you do in GP into Business Central and publish them out into wherever you want in your pages. And it had the smart list feature that you were showing, Joe, as well. And it had a drop down where you can select different filters you saved. You can drill into your transactions and get, it has similar, they're called pages, but it has similar concepts in Business Central that you can look at.
All right, we're going to move on a little bit to our next presenter, who has been waiting patiently and seeing quite a lot of her presentation be absorbed by other presenters, but Amber Bell, our GPUG All-Star and owner of Training Dynamo. Amber, if you want to share your screen, please take it away.
Okay, I don't really have anything to share on my screen, but I just wanted to give you guys kind of my thoughts and my planned experience with dealing with BC and dealing with the calls that everybody is getting. So this is my kind of 2 cents in my background. So when I started my own company, I've worked with GP for over 20 years. Sean kind of stole my joke. He said he was a kid. I say that I used it to balance my allowance because I was very tiny when I started now. But it's been a long, long time that I've used GP. But basically what I did when I started my own company, which was 5 years ago now, I on purpose implemented using QuickBooks. I would get a lot of clients that would go, oh, I love QuickBooks. I hate GP. I love QuickBooks. I hate GP. And so I actually wrote a blog about that just a couple of weeks ago about what it was like to use QuickBooks. There's really great stuff in QuickBooks and there's terrible stuff that I hated in QuickBooks. So I kind of came down like, there's things that are great in QuickBooks that here's some ways to do that in GP, but here's some things that are horrible in QuickBooks that I just really wish I would have been able to use GP. But on purpose, like I said, I used my data as a consultant, as a guinea pig in QuickBooks. My next phase is going to be using BC. Now, does that mean that every time I have to do my books, I'm learning a new system? Well, it's been 5 years, so I'm ready to do a new challenge, and I want to use BC. And the reason I want to use BC is that as I have clients that are asking me about BC, and it's honestly not everybody isn't asking. I mean, I think a lot of times we get this fear because there's a lot of marketing behind BC. But most day-to-day customers, if they hear of it, they're just not especially right now, are just like, this has been a horrible year. I don't want to talk about another ERP right now. It's been, we're just getting through the hardest year we ever had. So the fact is that most customers are going to keep using GP for the indefinite future. So that's, you know, I don't want anybody to act in this fear like GP is going away, or that all their customers that use GP are itching to run out the door. People aren't like that. And we get sometimes caught in the marketing side of things and the pushy sales side of things. And the way I'm working on my blog right now, I have a bunch of them queued up, but one of them is that at this point, if I get a call on my cell phone that's from my hometown cell number, I know that it's spam at this point. Like, I mean, unless it's in my phone, if it's a random phone number from 760, that's my number. If you want to robocall me, you can call me from 760. I won't pick up. But when I see that number, I know that it's going to be either someone saying my Social Security was compromised, or that my car warranty is out of date. I just bought a car a couple months ago, so I know my warranty isn't out of date. It's just a pushy salesperson. If there's a pushy salesperson that's calling you and saying GP is going away tomorrow, it's, you know, doomsday, it's the end of the world, your data is going to be gone, or whatever, they're saying something scary. What would you do if the person was pushing you that doesn't know anything about your car? Would you say, oh, wow, here's my Social Security number and my credit card number, I'm ready to pay you for my warranty? Well, of course you wouldn't. If it was someone from your auto dealer, or someone from your guy down the street that fixes your car every week, and he says, there's a recall, it's a big deal, we need to take a look at your car, you would probably talk to them. Now, if a person from your trusted partner comes in and says, hey, you have told me for 10 years, the thing that makes you crazy about GP is X, Y, Z. We have tried every different way to fix it. We've trained you, you know everything about GP, but I've been learning about BC, and BC fixes that issue, or it's really good fit for you because you guys do this, this, and this. Then talk to them and take a look. Now, somebody mentioned there's other cloud products out there. I don't know if we're allowed to say the names of them. One of them rhymes with, you know, Dacumatica. I know people are trying that one. I didn't name the name. But, you know, there's other ones that are out there that are really good too. And if you're looking at something different, look at your options. Don't just blindly go one way. That being said, I think BC is growing. There's a lot of money going into it. And when a lot of money are going into a product, it grows. That happened with GP when Microsoft took over. A lot of money came in. And now GP is awesome and great and wonderful. Plus, all that money came in meant that a lot of ISVs came in, and it grew and it grew. And now it's really stable and it's really wonderful. And we can all talk about how much we love it. But when you talk to a partner, or if you talk to your partner and they know your system and they know your processes, and they say, you know what, it's just not there yet because this, and this, listen to them because they know what they're talking about. Now, if they're saying BC could be good for you, you need to be educated on what you actually do. What I have found time and again is I'll do system reviews with customers and I'll say, you know, what reports do you run? And it takes forever to get people to just say, these are the 5 reports or the 15 reports we rely on every month. And like somebody mentioned, if it's a smart list and you're exporting and then you're doing this, this, and this, can you get an equivalent? If you can't get an equivalent, it's not ready for you yet. Does that mean BC wouldn't be ready for you 5 years down the line? It might be, but to have that conversation and say, to get our job done, we do this through this. This is what this team does. This is what this team does. This is what I do. And at the end of the day, we want the reports to have this information. If you can do that in GP and it's working like a dream, then don't feel pressure. Don't feel this inordinate pressure. But if you're saying, well, we do these 15 things, but we can't do these 25 other things we want to do, and someone says, well, here's how BC will solve that issue, or here's how this product will solve this issue, and you look and you go, it's great and it fits and it's wonderful, then start talking to them. But if they can't, if you're already got a great system and it's working really well, don't feel this like fear. And I think when we make decisions based on fear, and this last year, people we've been living in fear. We've been living with pressure. We've been living with stress. And if you add to that fear, some random person calls you and says, hey, I'm here and BC is great and GP is terrible. Is that adding to you making a a really good decision, or is that adding to your fear and making you make a impulsive decision about something that really is a big deal? Running your system is a really big deal. And if it's working and it's running properly, take a step back and say, yeah, maybe down the line, our goal might be BC down the line. For whatever reason, you look at something, you like that it's on your cell phone, you like that it does this, you like that it does that. That's great. But you can look at other products, and I think everybody's mentioned there's this way to get it mobile for GP, there's this, that. But if you look and you go, no, we know BC is the solution we want to do, then get to know what things are going to migrate over. How are they going to migrate over? What processes are going to be different? Can you start modifying your required reports or data so that when it comes time to migrate, you go, well, we're already using GP kind of like how we'll use data in BC, so that when we pull over data or we want to pull over data, it's going to map better than it would. If you could do that kind of thing, that's great. But again, that's where a good partner is going to come in and help you. They're going to say, don't worry about that. We already have done 15 other customers. They're very similar to you. They have the same, we've worked with customers with multiple companies. They're doing distribution. They have items like you do. They have services. They deal with taxes the way you do. They deal with this. As they get these, for lack of a better term, people always call them vanilla installs. Like, somebody said AP, AR, GL. As they get those ones under their belt and they're done, and then they move to the little bit more complicated ones. If your company is pretty complicated, think about all that experience you're going to get from your partner or whoever you're working with if they've gone through that. If you talk to someone and they say, well, no, we only do BC. We don't know anything about GP, but BC is great. Well, you'll go, well, you don't know then what I'm losing. So they have to know that what am I losing and what am I gaining? And that's the big thing you really need to start getting from these kind of events, from documents online. There's a lot of blogs coming out. Dynamics Con is doing sessions on that. I know DAC is trying to put more, people are putting more blogs about BC versus GP. So there's a lot of information out there for you. So for my company, I can't say to you, I think BC is terrible, because I've never really worked with it. I've looked at it a couple times, but I know that in a couple months and a year, and I've used BC, and I could say there's great stuff in there, but I know that it won't work for these customers. So that's basically where I'm coming from, is I want to have an educated side. Is that reasonable for all of you to do? Well, no, but you might be able to get into a test environment. You can go to these kind of events and start writing your questions down in advance. Say, these are the reports I do, and talk to your partner, talk to someone, put it on the forums and say, this is what I do. Can you do it in BC? And then the other thing too is that a lot of times, things David Musgrave mentioned, a lot of people aren't using all that GP can do. So sometimes the first thing is say, this is a problem we have. Has someone else solved that in GP, and how have they done it? So utilize these user groups to say, this is our problem. We're doing it manually outside of GP. And then someone goes, well, did you know you can just do XYZ and that'll be inside of GP? So a lot of things are really education first. That's my whole that's my whole shtick. It's been that way forever, is educate yourself first. Don't base it on fear, and then figure out what you can do. So that's the end. So Steve, is that okay enough?
It's outstanding. Thank you. Everybody loves you, Amber. Golly. There's a lot to say. A lot of people say it. And I would like to now turn it over to a couple of fine folks from Whipley. Barb Bell is in Green Bay with the Whipley division there, and she has been a staunch supporter of the Green Bay GPUG group for as long as I've been involved. And Pritin Patel just recently joined Whipley in the Chicago area, I think. So the two of you, if you can coordinate amongst yourselves, maybe Pritin, if you would be the presenter, share your screen, and Barb, chime in.
Absolutely. Thank you, Steve, for kind of setting this up. So really, we put together a small little deck here, but we'll kind of do some introduction, and I was taking notes while people were talking. So I just want to address some of the things that we were talking about. But we'll start with introduction real quick. So my name is Pritin Patel. My background, I've implemented Dynamics GP for about 5 years, and then the last 3 I have been implementing Business Central, and Wifley here, I am kind of the business developer, client account manager for all of our GP and BC clients. I'll let Barb introduce herself.
Thanks, Britton. As Britton said, I am Barb Bell. I'm a director here at Wifley on our financial and operational systems team. I've actually been working with the GP product since version 1. So yes, that was when I was probably, maybe 8-10 years old. But yes, a lot of experience with GP. In the last probably 4 years have started to focus on the Business Central solution. So happy to share some of our experiences and kind of pros and cons and what we have learned, in talking to our clients about looking or potentially evaluating and migrating to Business Central.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Barb. So really, I'll talk about the slide in a minute, but really just want to reiterate, kind of our philosophy here is to, again, educate our clients and talk to them about their cloud strategy. Do they have a cloud strategy? If so, does GP make sense? I think we mentioned maybe hosting GP, that's an option. Or if you're trying to look at different cloud solutions, there are multiple solutions that we offer or they're out there. We kind of talk to them about that. And then we also talk to them about Business Central to see if it's a fit for them, if it makes sense. And really it's that Office 365 and the 365 platform. And if they are on Office 365, does it make sense? And kind of really do some analysis to see if it makes sense for them to go to Business Central. But a couple of the other things that I kind of heard throughout kind of our seminar today is, BC is really meant for kind of small and medium-sized clients. I would kind of challenge that. I've been part of some big implementation personally with manufacturing and service with 100 Business Central users in multiple countries. I mean, Business Central can be that solution. As I think somebody mentioned that the Business Central product comes from Nav, and Nav's been around for several years with I think over 100,000 user bases. So Business Central can be used for small, medium, and even some bigger clients as well. And kind of the third point I want to really talk about, is really we spent a lot of time, and I've been part of several dozen GP to BC migration using the Microsoft migration tool, and even outside of that, just doing some GP to BC migration. So we really spent a lot of time on methodology to make sure that GP users are understanding the Business Central is a different platform, but what are the similarities? What are the differences? And making sure that their data comes in correctly as well. We're not just lifting and shifting, but we're spending some time on some pre-migration tasks as well to help you clean up your data, and then post-migration as well to make sure your Business Central is set up to meet your needs right now and in the future. So we have some methodology and some processes in place. We're not just lifting and just shoving your data from your current GP environment into Business Central. And the last thing I want to add to that is, if you are part of a GP to BC kind of migration, not with us or anybody else, ask about the consultants that are going to perform that work. And we really pride ourselves on having those consultants that are going to help you with that implementation, have experience with both GP and BC, so they can talk again about the similarities and differences, and kind of help you and guide you and answer any questions that you have. So really, I was just kind of making some notes here, and I just wanted to make sure I kind of address that before we dive into the slides here. Barb, do you want to kind of add anything to that?
No, I can add as I kind of talk through some of the slides a little bit later.
Perfect. All right, so really kind of the slides here. So the state of GP, right? I think a couple of us mentioned that GP is not being retired by Microsoft. It is not going away. They are dropping the year at the end of GP. So if you heard of GP 2013, 15, 16, they are dropping the year. It's going to be just called GP. Yearly updates are required in order to maintain support. They are going to continue to release enhancements to GP, but not new functionality. Partner solutions are still supported. And if you're on an older version, if you're all versions GP 15 and before are no longer supported. So if you're on an older version, we recommend at least moving to a more recent version of GP. And not letting me click on the next slide, so give me just a second. So really the momentum to move to cloud, and I kind of mentioned, the cloud strategy, right? If you have a cloud strategy, Business Central might make sense. So if we are going to have that conversation, Microsoft is thinking about those customers that are looking to move to cloud. There are some licensing initiatives that Barb is going to cover a little bit later on around the pricing, the 40% off MSRP, the CSP to EP offering, kind of the migration tool enhancements. I want to talk a little bit about that. And then kind of the ISV market, right? I think there has been a move for a lot of the traditional GP ISVs to move into Business Central and be available on partner stores and at the app stores. So you are going to see a huge move between the ISPs in the Business Central market, the interoperability with Office 365. And then really, if you're on Business Central, there's continuous improvement and no need to schedule upgrades. Those are part of your SaaS model that you're on. So there are some benefits of being on Business Central, but there are some cons as well. But we'll talk a little bit about both of those. So kind of the migration tool, really, if you're on GP 2015 or a newer version of that, you could use a migration tool. So Microsoft released their cloud migration tool 2 years ago. And I was part of that testing. I worked with Microsoft in fall of 2018. When they first released this tool, it was not good. It had a lot of gaps and it had a lot of missing things, and they really didn't take that into consideration. But they did take our feedback as partners. We provided feedback with what we saw was missing, and they started enhancing the migration tool with all the pieces that we recommended. So now we're into wave 2. They made, I think, 4 or 5 version enhancements to the cloud migration tool. And I think, it works really well, especially for your core clients that use, GL, APAR, maybe even light inventory distribution. The migration tool works well. If you are more complex with manufacturing, service, and a lot of customization, it might make sense to do a re-implementation versus using the cloud migration tool. And really, kind of the cloud migration tool includes master data. So it includes chart of accounts, your segments, customers. Like I mentioned, there's some pre-migration tasks. We can help you clean that up a little bit before it comes to Business Central. It brings in multiple ship-to addresses. On the vendor side, it brings up vendor information, your order addresses, inventory. Checkbooks is something that they added recently. And then historical data, right? It has these extension tables that are like Smart List, where you can see historical data with your receivables, payables, sales order, purchase order transactions. And then it brings over your open transactions into Business Central as well, your open AR, open AP, open purchase order. And you can reconcile, there's reports that you can run in Business Central that you can reconcile to GP to make sure everything came over correctly. And it also brings in supporting data, such as salesperson, payment terms, shipping methods, and kind of posting group based on what you have set up in GP. And then the last thing I kind of want to cover is, part of the migration tool, Microsoft has added a option to take your data and put it into Azure Data Lake. So if you do go to Business Central and you migrate it over, you can take your current GP database and put it into this Azure Data Lake, and you can point that into Power BI and extract out any of the tables and data that you had in your previous GP environment. So you don't need to keep that SQL Server or those databases around, and you can use Azure Data Lake. And the last thing, sorry, I forgot to mention one more thing. We've been working with Binary. So Binary is in process of developing their migration tool that will sit on Microsoft's cloud migration tool, and we've been working closely with them to develop that tool. And we have customers that have GP and MEM where we migrated them to Business Central using Binary and the cloud migration tool. So Binary is going to release more information about their tool. So if you are using MEM with GP, you could utilize the Microsoft Cloud Migration tool to migrate your data. I'm going to pass it over to Barb here to talk about some of the Business Central licensing and renewal offerings.
Yeah, Printon, there was one question on if the SOP transactions migrate. They didn't see that on the slide, so do you want to just speak to that?
Yeah, so the open sales orders do not migrate as part of the migration. That would be something that we can utilize using some of the out-of-the-box features like edit in Excel or config packages. That's usually part of our implementation methodology. We'll look at your open sales orders and we'll migrate those over as well.
Okay, thanks. And yes, David, thank you. It's binary stream that Brenton was speaking to on the MEM migration. Okay, so just some information on kind of the features and the solution capabilities within Business Central that I'll walk through here, and then also talk about the licensing and the promotions more from an educational standpoint. So with the solutions, these are the functional areas that are available with Business Central, and the first 6, and I think this slide builds here, the first 6 are part of what's called essentials, and then the production, which is really the manufacturing, and service are part of the premium licensing. So that's kind of the breakdown of the functionality that's available within Business Central, just to give you an idea of some of that detail. And then regarding the actual pricing or the licensing for that, the Essentials license is $70 per user per month. And again, as somebody else had already stated, it is a per user or a named user licensing model versus the concurrent licensing that's available with GP. And then the premium license is the $100 per named user per month. Now that's the list price. Any Dynamics customer that moves to Business Central does get a 40% discount. So the Essentials license would be the $42 per user per month, and then the premium is the $60. And then there is what's called a team member license, which is a view only license. That list price is $8, and then it's $5 per user per month with that 40% discount. Next slide, Brenton. Thank you. Okay, so just a couple of slides here detailing out what this CSP to EP renewal offer that Microsoft does have available. So CSP stands for Cloud Solution Provider. So it's a program or part of the cloud program with Microsoft. And what Microsoft is offering is clients that are current on their enhancement plan or their service plan with GP can take advantage of this offer when they renew their enhancement plan and move to the CSP or the Cloud Solution Provider program. It gives them 2 things: all of their existing enhancement plan benefits that they have today with GP. They will still have all of those benefits, but what it also gives them then is Business Central licenses. So whatever your current renewal price is, we purchase, so to speak, Business Central licenses equivalent to that renewal amount. So you get your enhancement plan benefits plus those Business Central licenses if and when you're ready to move to Business Central. So just because you do the CSP to EP renewal offer does not mean that you have to move to Business Central. So you can always go back just to the EP or your enhancement plan at any point, but it is actually a very good offer in that you get those free Business Central licenses. And then what Microsoft also is providing is up to 4 times the number of GP licenses. You would get that equivalent in Business Central. So if you have 10 GP licenses, you essentially could get 40 Business Central licenses. And the reason why Microsoft is doing that is because of the licensing model, GP being concurrent and Business Central being named users. So this offer is available for 3 years. So you renew, this first year, and then you can opt to renew for 2 more years. So that's what kind of that second bullet is under that offer length and duration. What the offer, what the price will be after that 3 years, who knows, but it is something that's available, that pricing for 3 years. So included in that calculation of those number of licenses, there is a 60% discount. So out of the box, if you don't take advantage of the CSP to EP renewal offer, you can experience that 40% discount. With this offer, the calculation of those Business Central licenses is at a 60% discount. So did want to just mention that as well. There's no, minimum license requirement. And then, like I said, you can get up to 4 times those number of GP users. So print next slide. So I can take a minute and look at the questions here. Yeah, so out of the box, you'd get that 40% discount if your renewal is coming due. And this offer, I guess I didn't mention, this offer is available through June 30th of this year. So if your renewal is coming up, over the next, 5 months or so, you can take advantage of this renewal offer. And, something to definitely consider, again, it doesn't require that you move to Business Central. You can always go back to just the enhancement plan, coverage that you have. You really aren't losing anything if you take advantage of the offer. You can, look to migrate a year or 2 from now. It doesn't have to be something that you have to do now, knowing maybe that there are some gaps, with Business Central. It's really something that you do need to evaluate with your partner. A couple other comments that I will make, the question on the Smart List. Initially, Smart List Designer functionality was supposed to be released in October or last October. I understand that it's being positioned now or on the roadmap for the April release this year. It does have some pretty nice functionality. A couple of us from Whipley were actually on a preview group with Microsoft and evaluating that functionality. So hopefully they get that released or part of Business Central. The question on MR, that is, I'll say, maybe kind of one of the gaps with Business Central. The financial statement reporting really isn't quite as strong as what, Management Reporter offers if you're using MR. MSX Group currently supports Management Reporter, originally had developed Management Reporter. They do have a new product called Prospero. That's kind of an advanced, MR tool. It is an additional purchase, but it is, integrated or pulls the data from Business Central. And they also do have a tool that could migrate all of your MR reports, to their solution Prospero. So, there is an option to kind of continue with, that Management Reporter experience, but just to note that that is an add-on or an additional, purchase with Business Central. Anything else to add, Printon, that maybe I didn't mention or that we...
Yeah, just one more thing. I think somebody also mentioned about, Microsoft's program about, reaching out to their customers. If you want to talk a little bit about that, or I can talk about it.
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Yes. Forgot about that. So yeah, I think, John, maybe you had mentioned about Microsoft reaching out to clients. I think they're reaching out to all GP clients is my understanding. We are part of a program with Microsoft. In fact, just had a call with them yesterday to partner with them as they're reaching out to our clients so that we can help educate our clients. Microsoft, their position is really to educate the clients. Maybe some people take it as trying to push them to the cloud. Eventually, you will need to go there, when that is, who really knows. But it's really about educating, the client. So, if you are getting that call from Microsoft, they're offering a free kind of qualification. And then there is also an assessment tool, that can help assess kind of everything that you're using in GP and then kind of equate, is that functionality available in Business Central. So while there will be those calls, hopefully it's more positioned as that educational, type call or contact that they're making. But I know we are working with Microsoft as well in trying to help educate our clients as well.
Yeah, and I'm just reading some of the comments. Yeah, Jet works really well as with Business Central. We implemented it a lot, especially for advanced, more financial reporting. So definitely.
So I think I just comment a little bit on the enhancement renewal, the CSP offer, and some of the discussions on kind of Microsoft's push. I mean, if you step back a layer and if you look at Microsoft's like, kind of investment side of things and stock reportings and things like that, one of their two main items that's reported on is cloud, and what falls into the bucket for their cloud offering and growth is a huge part of it. So, it's not something they're directly saying or that I've seen, but obviously if you sign up for CSP, you're signing up for one of their cloud offerings. So they're taking their GP revenue and putting it into the cloud, and so, just company-wide, obviously with most technology companies, cloud is the big push. So, there is kind of a business side of it, obviously, with what the goals are overall in the company and what is being measured on by the investors right now. So, if you want to kind of step back and take the bigger picture view of, what's some of the goals of Microsoft, that certainly is one of their kind of two main investment, reporting pieces right now. So it's interesting to kind of see that. But in the end, from my perspective, I just like thinking about that and sharing it, just because that CSP offering is essentially staying on GP, taking advantage of, the software that you are happy with, and Microsoft's getting their goal of saying it's a cloud offering, even though you're using GP yet. So an interesting kind of twist of everybody getting the best of both worlds. So I guess everybody can be happy and keep on going the way you're using it.
Yes, exactly. Thanks, John, for sharing that.
All right. Any other questions? Anybody? This is the last of our quote formal presentations, and it's really nice to hear the nuts and bolts from you too. Everybody needs to hear it. It's part of the decision process. So thank you, Pritin, and thank you, Barb, very, very much. We have a little time for some general questions. If you'd like to either raise your hand. Let's see, I've got Sean Dorward has raised his hand, and you want to open your mic, Sean?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So I wanted to just first thank you, Steve, for being the corraler of cats. I don't know if that's the way to say it, but this topic is not always welcome in the space. It's a real it's really important to have this open dialogue for everyone's sake, right? Because the point of an ERP system is to build efficiencies in your organization, not to, the point of an ERP system is not to employ consultants. The point of an ERP system is not to empower Microsoft. It's to better your organization. Now, so that always has to be one. I wanted to just add, excuse me, to something I think Barb had said about Smart List Designer, because I think it's really important on the BC side. So in GP, we all know about, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. Is that okay?
Go right ahead.
We all know about Smart Lists in GP, and so if you do go to Business Central, generally what everyone's sort of, the first thing that I hear, or not the first, but close to it, is where are my Smart Lists? And realistically speaking, Smart Lists are just a organized view of the data set. And in Business Central, just so that you're aware, in Business Central, and there was a couple comments made about the lack of access to the backend, but what we have is web services in Business Central, and these are out-of-the-box connectors, basically. So there's queries, pages, other objects, and you can put your own extension in there to aggregate data the way that you need to. But some of these are, here's some out-of-the-box ones. So I'm just going to copy this link location, and I'm going to go into Excel, create a new file. I'm going to go to data, get data, OData. You only have to do this once. Paste this. Oops, that wasn't the right. It wasn't the right URL. I'm going to copy this URL. Paste that in there. Again, it's using that Microsoft 365 account, my single sign-on. So boom, there's my data. Now I just save this Excel file, and this is my smart list. I have all the data fields. I can filter it. I can build my own KPIs. The same routine in Power BI or any other reporting tool. But the important part of it is that the data is available. And so when Barb, I think, mentioned Smart List Designer, that what I said was this data, we can customize it and aggregate the data by putting an extension in. Well, if you don't know how to write that code, that doesn't help us, right? But Smart List Designer, which doesn't have the same look and feel as the Smart List Designer now, but the end result is the same. So hopefully it does come out in April. We were kind of disappointed with the fact that it didn't come out in the fall last year, because it is a gap that Microsoft has filled. Interestingly enough, for Belinda and others, the Smart List Designer is actually a Power App that is embedded in Business Central. So Microsoft not only is preaching the 3 cloud, world, they're actually using it. So I wanted to mention that a little bit about data. So that was
that Excel report you just showed with OData is refreshable.
It is refreshable, right? It's a read only, and all we have to do is refresh it, just like a smart list.
And you could use the query editor in Excel to model it up a bit. So unlike with the GP Smart List, where you export it out and then you doctor it up however you want to do it, you could just do it so that all those changes are refreshable as well.
That's right.
So you're using an OData connection too, I noticed.
That's correct.
Because I think
and only users who have access to it in Business Central. So, naturally, I couldn't just send this URL around to anyone. They have to be a BC user here.
So I think it was you that made the comment about OData being such a disaster at the start.
Well, OData for Excel, and then APIs elsewhere.
That's right. Right.
The disaster was GP's OData.
And this is OData version 4, and yeah, like Linda said, GP's still in an older version.
Okay. Pam has her hand raised too. Pam, you want to turn on your mic and chime in?
Well, I was curious of how many are users that have migrated to BC that are in this meeting. Has anybody migrated from GP to BC? And could you
put it in the comments there? Put it in.
Give us some insight on how was it? Was it what you expected? Anything?
I think the users would be attending BC user group meetings rather than GP.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
One thing I'll mention about going from, and I know we've touched on it in all sorts of ways, is the core functionality. If you're in GP and you use core functionality, it's a different tool, so there's a different user experience, a different way of doing things, but it's going to do what you want. But if you leverage significant ISVs, and significant is up to the organization, may be different for you than it is others. And I think the folks from Whiffley were mentioning, like binary stream, because multi-entity management for GP is such a popular ISV. But, for example, if you rely on McCorma for, check security, whatever, that's not going to come with you. So you have to have a solution to resolve that gap. And that's part of why we say it's a new implementation, because maybe you're going to migrate some things, you always do, but you have to get a list of business requirements and say, okay, now how do I solve for X? Because, my pricing from Rockton, that doesn't come over. So those are things to consider through that journey.
Yeah, and Sean, just to add to that, right? Some of that functionality might be embedded into, into Business Central, like Micker. There's some Micker functionality or change log that could maybe kind of supplement with Rockton. But yeah, part of your, you should have that conversation with all your ISVs. How are they going to be addressed in Business Central? and all the third parties, right? If they're available, or if you're going to use embedded feature, how is that going to work?
Amber has her hand raised. Amber, you want to turn on your mic and your camera.
Okay. I was just going to say, I put in the chat the links to the ideas sites. I don't know if people, because we do have people on the call that might not have ever heard of those sites. If you ever look at the GP roadmaps, at this point now, most of the time it'll say, there'll be major things they're going to fix or release in the upcoming releases, but it will say top requested changes for GP made by users. And what they're talking about is those ideas sites. So if there's something in GP that drives you bonkers and you wish it was gone or wish it was there, that's where you're going to vote for them. The other thing too is it's also, I was just looking at the BC one, and that's another place that you might want to look in there and see what are people saying BC doesn't have. Because then if you see it in the ideas, you might read one of those and go, yeah, that's a good idea. I want that. But if that's not included in BC, I need to ask about that feature because I need that. So you might see something in there that would be a deal breaker. Like I can't move to BC until they get this feature fixed or added or something like that. So, and right now, since Microsoft is investing in both products, now's the time to say, this is what I want in GP, or I want to move to BC, but it has to have this feature, or I want this feature. I've done my due diligence, but it's just not there. So, and sometimes they'll even answer, it is there, they'll say this is not, something that's already there. But definitely if you haven't bookmarked those sites and you're not active on those sites, I'll be honest, I haven't been great on them, but I'm trying to get better. So if you notice something in GP that you want to fix, that's a great place to put it. If you notice something in BC that's missing, that's a good place to put that. So I put them into the chat, but you can also just Google or Bing search, whatever you want to use, just ideas, Microsoft Ideas BC, Microsoft Ideas GP, and you'll go to the main site and just scroll for GP or scroll until you find Business Central, and then you can log in and vote for, try to find one that's already there and vote it up, as opposed to making one that's, like if Steve already has one in there, he can get all of us to vote for it. That's going to make it go to the top. If you put a brand new one in there that's just slightly worded different, you're going to lose votes on both of them. So that's my 2 cents on using ideas.
And I'll add real quick with that, Amber. Right now, Terry Healy just kind of announced that they're really active right now, looking at next fall's release. So if there's a time to get it in, it's in the next month,
yeah,
or sooner. So now is the time for this year. So I'll add that, and then certainly. Go to the GPUG forum and post it and say, hey, have you had this problem? Here's a link. Go vote for this. Talk to your partner, talk to your friends, tell everybody to go vote for it so it gets recognition.
Yeah. So put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your, if you have you're using your Facebook or you're using your Twitter for work, put it out there as many places as you can, and then let everybody know that was here. Like if you say to Steve knows everybody in GP world. So if you say, hey, Steve, this is what I put on ideas, he'll put it on your chapter. He'll put it on his, posts. If it's something that he agrees with, I'm sure. I'm not obligating Steve to vote for everybody's, but he might go, that's a terrible idea. No, I'm just kidding. But, just let everybody know. But that's the way to make the product better. So we can talk about what we love about GP and what we don't like about BC. But what's going to make both better is you being involved. And the fact that we're dealing with 2 products that they make decisions based on these votes is really a positive for both products. So I think it's something that we need to take advantage of. And like I said, if you say, we really like what we saw about BC, but it's just not there for this reasons, I would imagine that Microsoft would start seeing a bunch of people saying it's not there in GP, and I'm thinking of switching to XYZ product because it has it. That's gonna, that's something that they'll notice. But if you mention, hey, I'm looking at BC and GP, I wish both had this. There's lots of ways to make it a very positive interaction. And I think the more educated and more positive you can be, it's just a better way to live. That's just my Amber Bell 2 cents.
Well, in all of the on-site summits, they emphasize that there is actually a very significant percentage of the changes that are made to GP, of the updates, the improvements, are based on votes from that very site you're talking about. So It's not a throwaway thing. It's not that you're wasting your vote. It absolutely counts. So, do we have any other questions? Pam, have you noticed any other questions?
I see Amber's hand still up. I'm not sure if she still has a question, but I do. You said they're improving GP. I also heard they're not improving GP. Are they making changes? Are they making updates? Anybody?
I'll jump in. I mean, the roadmap is out there. The feature releases are every October. So that is the improvements. You know, I actually in my other parts of the slide, you know, I actually had some of the last releases too, but you can certainly find them out there on the what's new documentation. But, you know, GP is compatible with Windows Server 2019, SQL Server 19, which actually came out more than a year ago on the fall release. Other things came out this past fall. So yes, there are releases. That's the annual release that was just talked about in the last slides. So yes, being released, being tax updates, you know, it's really nice now that we have a set schedule, almost more than any other time in the past, is that we know October is the feature release. We're going to get that year-end update. We're going to get a mid-year, which includes the Canadian payroll updates, and we've got really a good sequence of getting those updates. So yes, it is being updated.
Yeah.
Belinda has her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Amber. You go ahead, Amber.
I was going to say Belinda Allen is amazing. I just wanted to raise my hand to say that. Just kidding. No, no, Belinda Allen is amazing. I did put in the chat, if you're monitoring that, I did put a link to the what's new, and they add to that link with what's new for October 2020. So there were actually some really cool features in October 2020. Definitely take a look at that. So, and sometimes some of the changes, they're not getting like the big ta-da from a lot of people, but I'll look through and I'll go, oh my goodness, that solves something that I really liked. Like they added user-defined fields to journal entries. There's more imports and things like that. There's a better copy-paste feed functionality. There's things like that. So the answer is yes, they are adding to GP. The last time I saw like there was a link to like when they're doing their updates and stuff. They had it posted to it as of like 2019, but it was through 2024. So I can't find the link for the latest, but I'm sure there is one. But yeah, they are definitely adding features. But if you ever have seen, they used to do a slide and it would say, this is coming, this is coming. The slide will literally say voted for a feature. So that's where that comes from. They are adding features. They're not waiting for years and years, but they're doing them at these yearly releases. So definitely worth taking a look at. And if you just bookmark, take away the what's new part of the bookmark I just sent and do it through Dynamics GP, that will stay updated. So you can bookmark it that way.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that. The updates are definitely happening. That's something that they've made very clear. I wouldn't expect anything big like a new module, but they're definitely adding improvements. They're going through that list that Amber talked about, the ideas list, and that's where they are getting most of the things that they're adding. But I wouldn't look for any new modules, but they're definitely making improvements, and they're bringing them in more regularly. A couple other things that I wanted to mention. I don't know if everyone is watching the comments, but there is no payroll built into BC. You have to use an ISV, and some of the ISVs that were in the payroll side of GP that we're used to are doing things for BC, like Integrity Data, and which Barb gave her thumbs up to, as well as Sean and is it Priton? Am I pronouncing it right?
Yeah, Priton.
As well as Priton. So I wanted to point that out. So there are some options, but that just solidifies that everybody was saying that you really need to do an analysis to see what's there and what changes. And I do want to say, it probably does sound like I'm all pro. Hey, go to BC. There are definitely things that I like about GP a whole lot better. It just was working for me on my back end stuff. But let me tell you, the GP data structure is hands down better than the BC data structure, and it's not just because I know it, but so it's not always just a slam dunk. Yeah.
All right, and I'll add in. I did put the link in there for the life cycle. I like to add a note about that too. It has not been updated in, I think, since they put that out there, which is also the case with almost any of the other life cycles that are out there. If you look at BC, I think it just has another update coming this year, more or less. So it goes through 2024. I don't know when they go out there and kind of refresh those, but most of those are pretty stagnant. So again, estimates are out there, 35, 40,000 GP implementations out there running. I would not worry about that, because I've had a couple questions, it only goes to 2024. There's a TBA at the end of that for a reason. So certainly continuing to enhance it, but that's the link to go out there and see the release schedule.
Got a couple more hands raised. Zubin, I see you have your hand raised, and welcome back.
Hi there. I've been working on listening in on the conversation for a while here, but I wanted to touch upon something to get Belinda's ears to perk up. I don't know if anyone talked about this cloud hybridization. It was brought up a couple years ago about being able to sync a GP system to a BC tenant such that you could take advantage of the online reporting. And it's kind of an interesting concept. You don't necessarily need to run it through BC, but we've been working with Azure SQL databases, treating it like a data warehouse and using the Azure Data Factory to copy and sync our data from on-premise systems up to the cloud. And if you've got a cloud Azure SQL database, the interesting thing is that can hook up directly to Power BI and to Power Automate and such now. And you've got, instead of having to, it really wasn't that much of a struggle, but having to worry about kind of juggling a data gateway and having to, keeping that up and running with Power BI. Now you've got the ability to kind of leverage cloud databases, and you can do your own data warehousing very easily and kind of efficiently. So I don't know, Belinda, I don't know if you want to chime in on this. Have you done anything with the direct connections between Power BI and BC, or anything with GP lately?
Yeah, I've done direct connections with both of them. As far as Power BI goes, it is not the optimal way you would want to connect. You're only going to want to use a direct connection if the size of your data model reaches a certain level. And the reason for that is you lose some functionality when you do a direct connect. But it is cool. I mean, you don't have to worry about refreshing. So on a direct connect, the data schema resides in Power BI, but the data resides wherever the data is. So it's not quite as responsive. It's pretty good, but not quite as responsive, but you lose time intelligence because you can't do time intelligent DAX, and you lose some the functionality of the query editor because you just can't get to it.
Okay.
Sean has got his hand raised too. Sean, if you're available.
Yeah, I certainly am. So I want to respond to that a little bit, just kind of chime in. So part of it with data into data replication and data availability is the Common Data Service, or Dataverse as it's called now. And Microsoft still has intentions to take the Business Central data and make, I don't know about most, but a large amount of the Business Central data and make it available in Dataverse so that there's a sync and that data becomes more available through Azure services like Zubin was talking about. So that was kind of just wanted to answer that. The other thing I wanted, going back to GP, we're talking about, and Amber was bringing up the ideas website for suggestions, and we're talking about, what the life cycle is and what kind of improvements will go in it. And they go really hand in hand. And it's really important to kind of keep beating that drum and sharing that with every GP user on the planet, because if there's nothing to improve in GP, what are they going to put in the release? And because it's such a mature product as it is in the full robust ISV space, so they don't want to interfere with that, what are those things that you're struggling with? And Microsoft has a very trim team right now for this type of development research, for research and development. So they're asking us to be the R&D team And as long as we keep delivering those topics for them to work on that makes sense to be in the product, they'll keep doing it. That will fade out because it's a mature product, but let's not let it fade out now so we can keep getting cool new things added to the product.
All right. That's a excellent finishing statement, I think, because it's about 5 to 12 here in Green Bay Packer land. Unless there's any other questions, I'd like to wrap this up. I certainly want to thank all of our presenters today, Joe DeRuyter and Zubin Gidwani, Belinda Allen, Sean Dorward, David Musgrave, John Kirsch, David Laster, Bea Boucher, Amber Bell, Pritin Patel, and Barbara Bell. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us for this whole herd of cats experience. And thank you to everyone that has logged in. I hope you have all learned something. We've got experts left and right that are always willing to help solve problems and give their honest opinions. That's what we were looking for today, and I think we got them. So we will be posting the link to the recording again on the GPUG site and also in LinkedIn. And Pam, you want to say anything at the end?
I just wanted to thank everybody and appreciate all your opinions and your expertise. And it was a great meeting. Thank you, Steve, for putting it all together, and all your connections really make this meeting very informational. Appreciate it.
You bet. All right. Again, thank you all for participating and being with us today. So, so long, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.